okay, we're back for real this time. Before that was just a joke where, as a gag, we thought we'd start the show without sound. So you'd go, there's no sound, just so that one, we're checking that you're awake, and two, we know that you actually want to listen to what I have to say. So now you can't complain about all the things I say because you asked to be able to hear me say them. So anyway, no, the point is, for this week's episode, Zaboutine is going to be my temporary co-host. What we're going to do, we've decided, is obviously, this wasn't explained that well on the last episode he was on, unfortunately, because we didn't find out till afterwards. But YamatoCannon, due to being now the coach of Los Ratones, can't be on this show. By the way, I do agree with that in spirit. Like, for example, if I was someone in his team, I wouldn't like the idea he's going to talk about the team or anything going on within it, no matter what he says in public. Like, at the end of the day, my coach, mate, like, isn't the old school vibe, like, keep it in the locker room. So I don't hate that, but obviously it puts us in what you might call a conundrum in English, because on the one hand, he long-term is the co-host. Monty's not coming back full-time. It's possible he might come back and do another off-season episode, since obviously there's no games to watch, so he could just comment on the industry and goings on and other changes in the patches or something. But in general, what we thought we'd do is, rather than go, here's another co-host, and that's like, at this point, it's like, Mum, just pick a man and settle down. How many stepdads am I going to have? Rather than make it awkward like that for you kids. What we're going to do is, by having different people be the co-host or Monty do the unfilling, it never feels like we've properly replaced Yamato. Then when he's ready, he can come back, and then we can embrace him like he's been on the oil rig or something, or at war. And then he'll come back to our family. And then next year, hopefully YamatoCannon will be back and he'll be the proper co-host again, pending information about Los Ratones. And now that, spoiler, I don't think they're just going to win first stand. So I imagine he'll be back. I think that's all going to work out. We'll see, though, because obviously there's the implication of, like, then Los Ratones might just leave entirely. And everyone's like, oh, God, that's the new way to force Riot's hand to let him in LEC forever, I guess. So we'll just wait and see what happens on that. But anyway, the point is, Zaboutine is here, obviously one of the co-hosts of Hot Take Point Made League of Legends edition. He put it this way. Here's what I'll be fair. On the one hand, he's the one who last year's Worlds accurately predicted that 100 Thieves would bomb it and not get through the play-in. See, that's incredibly shrewd. This year, he did say KT Roster was the worst Korean team to ever qualify the World. So the point is, the show has range, Zaboutine. We have some really out there takes, right?
Yeah. For sure. I'm not used to not say hot takes anymore. That's the problem.
Oh, like, right. Yes.
Say serious things, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that, but I'll do my best to try to have like solid analysis.
By the way, though, you say that like a joke. It's sort of true, though, mate, because the reason I actually came up with that show, I've told the story before in Counter-Strike, was it was almost like that segment they have on LCK for the finals. I wanted to encourage people to have like a safe area where we just do crazy hot takes. But I know what you mean. Once your brain keys over into that and just takes like an opinion and you go, but how can I make it as hot as possible while still being plausible? You start to do that in every area of life. It's sort of low-key true. Like, I have noticed the one I do in CS, by the way, Maui does that almost on our other shows now as well. Like, you just get, once you start, you can't stop. It's too much fun, isn't it?
It's too fun. It's just way too fun to come up with. And the best is like the well-crafted ones, you know, that first like spike you and rage bait you, and then you have a very good reasoning, and then the guy is like, that's so good. I really love doing that.
Yes. No, I know exactly what you mean. That's why, if you notice, my favorite ones are the ones where I don't even say it and then quickly jump into the reasons. It's like you just let them sit and marinate for like 10 seconds. Like the take will be, you know, ones like in the past, like Zhao Hu is who they think Faker really is. Just let that sit for a minute. Just let that sit. Because I'm just waiting for them. What do you mean? What do you mean he has got my world champion? Oh, I love it, mate. I fucking love it. Because I know what you mean. Then you just hit with all like totally reasonable angles. Like, oh, actually, yeah, there's a point to that. Yeah, good point. Anyway, enough about that. Obviously, we have that show on the network when we can with Keyray. The joke with Keyray being, half of them can't understand what he's saying anyway, so they can't get fully offended. It feels like it's only, you know, it's only us they get really offended by.
I am part of the show. Sometimes, you know, I listen and I'm just, you know, repeating, and I'm like, oh, that was that word in English. Okay, that's great. That's great. I love it. And because he has the wildest takes as well, and you know, he watches all the games. That's the best part about it. Is nobody can come to him and say, "Oh, you haven't watched the game," because he would say, "No, MFR, right? I watched the games. You didn't." And let me tell you, like spring 2014, like week 4, look at this game, and it's like very hard to attack him on that.
Yeah. No, that's also the thing I also appreciate. People don't realize he isn't really sat around just thinking of crazy hot takes all day. Those are just his takes. I just knew his take. He's just a really unfiltered fan who has no professional reason to have to rein it all in. He doesn't have to think, this fan base might get upset if I say. He just can just say it, mate. So as a result, I feel like it works for that dynamic. Anyway, I also think this is going to work well for this show because obviously on this show, it doesn't matter if you watch all the regions. It's the off-season show anyway. It's mainly news, things that are happening around the industry leading into next year. I actually have an interesting place to begin. So one, I actually saw, this is how I know, mate, hell must have frozen over. I saw you were actually getting like all your flowers from like the French community the other day where people were like, wow, like he's really come to a great place with how he explains himself. Or so, there was some Twitter thread where everyone was giving you your flowers and being lovely and saying how they all accept you as an analyst and you're the most real analyst in French and stuff. You saw this thread, right?
Yeah, I saw this. I mean, the opinions of people throughout time about people of the scene in general varies from one end to the other so fast
Sure.
that I've always taken all of that with a grain of salt, because you just come with a very, like, there is a big problem within this industry in general, is like you have to say what everybody wants to hear to be praised. But if you keep doing that too much, then people don't care about what you say anymore. So it's kind of a fine balance between being authentic and being within the range of what's acceptable for people to hear. I'm not aiming personally to like do anything special to be liked. I just feel like eventually people realize I was probably not as bad as my record in LCS says, or as stupid as most of my takes are, because when you make content you have to engage with people. So but I if I say I don't care, it's not nice to the people that have been nice to me. It's just you have to take a step back, because I mean, you're probably like in the very best shoes of the whole industry to know that the array of opinion on someone can vary from one tweet to the other. So I'm always taking that with a very big grain of salt.
Oh, I know what you mean. I've always tried to do the same thing. Like, in a sense, in the same way as you want to just brush off the hater and go, well, who cares what they think? Well, what if the exact same person the next day is like, you're the best? You can't go, hey, now he knows where he's talking. That just sounds ridiculous. Now you sound like the pleb. Like, I have a joke which is similar to that, which is that's exactly what TSM fans always did to me, Zaboutine. What they did is, because there would be years when it was mainly just some of the insiders addressing TSM, that if we just said they were second best to Cloud9 when they even lost to Cloud9, they'd be like, obviously just haters with their anti-TSM agenda. But then years later, for example, I did a piece of content when they bombed that 2016 Worlds when they had the super team, but there was the one where they had to play RNG and Samsung and all these mega teams. It was like the group of death. So I did a piece that was basically like a written piece along the lines of like, yeah, but that's like a bunch of your ones that, for all we know, if they'd have gotten through, maybe that team would actually be in the semis, or they look, they were this close to get through any. And when I did that piece, the same exact TSM fans were just like, finally, some good bloody journalism. I knew he had it in him. It's like, what? Like, that's the exact same perspective. I just applied it to your team this time. Like, I know what you mean. You have
That's
to.
unreal.
If we're gonna, I know what you mean. You have to take the rough with the smooth, as we say in English. It's true.
Yeah,
it's true.
There is like a percentage of what's said that is like actual encouragement, and you're doing a good job.
Oh, sure.
But you should, like, as someone producing content on the internet, you should never take at face value what people tell you, because I'm pretty sure like people don't even know what they want on the internet because they're suggested so much content. So it's kind of your job to find what they want before they do. And sometimes it's running against the wind for quite some time, and people realize, oh no, this piece of content or this take was phenomenal back then. I got a fuck ton of backlash from the KC fan last year, because I said that's a team that can make worlds, but isn't guaranteed to make worlds. When they build that roster with Vladdy and Cannon, I was like, they have good players, but this is the first year of their mid and their ADC. If they don't make worlds, that's not a shame. And everybody fell on my back saying, what are you saying? Are you a hater and stuff? And when it didn't make it, people pulled a tweet and it was like, oh, he said that before and he didn't hate. It was true. And it's like, I'm just saying my opinion, man. So that's this thing of like, flattering the audience all the time just puts you directly into the coffin because you're not relevant. At the same time, full hot takes doesn't work either. So it's like, walking a fine line in between both. But I'm doing my job.
Sure. No, by the way, along those lines, it's actually also why I do think you have to have a level of bravery to be able to give hot takes in this community. Because I'll give you the obvious example to me. when before that first split had even, I think it was only like 1 week in when what's his name, Giotto made that comment, the GX coach, based on scrims, that like since his team was beating G2 in scrims, he heard Fnatic Wars as well. And at the time they weren't the top scrim team. He made that big bold take of like they won't even make Worlds this year, basically. But I always said the main flaw with that take is it doesn't get revolved next week. So I always said, bro, what would we have actually even done as a community, by the way, if G2 had actually floundered this year and at the end failed to make Worlds? But if you were the Giotto, you'd have had like 6 months abuse, and at the end you'd have been right. And I can tell you, it does not work this way, that when you then prove to be right, the people who were all abusive were like, sorry, oh, I take that back. They would just never even comment, bro. They would just, you'd have just been the idiot for 6 months, and at the end, you'd have been right. You'd get no like validation. It'd be like, what the hell? This hot take doesn't get a payoff. Like 5 people would go, well, I guess maybe he was right. They'd be like that. So I know what you mean. Like, you can't do it actually. In a way, you have to be right to yourself and to people that you care about the opinion of, and then you just have to hope that history remembers you the right way, mate. Exactly. Which I think it does. Here's the thing, the good news is this, Zaboutine. On a long enough time scale, I actually can tell you it does generally work out though. Like you get the odd person in history, I bitch about them, like the Uzi Eyes who get to just be like the best forever. Even like the joke is he could have stopped playing about half a decade ago. They'd still say this exact same opinion about him. But that's okay because he was a truly great player. If you notice, a lot of the mini battles I had, which seem like today's battles of, well, Faker isn't the best player right now. Bro, if you wait long enough, people do sort of like, the idiots get filtered out. Like, I'll give you the obvious example. I used to get mega hated on, mate, for that take that the original SKT bot lane, Bang and Wolf, weren't actually like generational players at their positions. They were like players that suited that squad. If you remember, they even played, they were like a fucking go-even bot lane. Like, if anything, their job was let the top and mid carry the solos and then get to the team fight and team fight correctly and do what Faker says and win the team fight. Like, but at the time, mate, because they had all those rings and that incredible resume, people didn't want to hear it. People back then would have gone nuts if you'd have ever said that Deft was better than them or something like that. They'd have lost their mind. But I actually think if you look now, that lunatic fan doesn't exist. Now everyone goes, yeah, they were just very good players who were Faker's teammates. I feel like eventually, once you take enough emotion, there's enough distance, eventually people figure it out, mate.
Because the history smoothed, out the intensity of the moment. The recency bias just goes away, and people look back and they're like, yeah, actually wasn't that that strong. I mean, some of the player escaped that, like Smeb. I will never understand why people.
I think he's overrated,
it's not a hot take.
I know you, as someone who did once think he was the best top player ever, I know what you mean, though, Zaboutine. What you mean is this. To other people, he's like, he's up here and everyone else is down here, even the other greats. Yeah. And also, they are doing that thing where they're romanticizing his absolute peak, whatever, season 6 or so. And then, like, to them, he was like that for 10 years. He was never anything different, Whereas, like, in the meantime, like, this is the real problem with doing recency bias. Like, it means that, like, if I say Zeus not that good this year, well, then he never gets to be Smeb, if you know what I mean. Whereas, like, you look at Zeus's resume, it's like, he should absolutely be in that conversation. I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's like, because I think people weren't there. I realized as well, like, and it's probably something you have on CS, is once you follow a scene for more than 10 years, there is a huge chunk of your audience that never, they didn't even participate to an era, but, not being part of the club feels bad for people online. So they behave like they were part of it, and they try to, like, contradict you on things that you have experienced. Because I always tell the kids, I'm like, if you tune to the French official broadcast of these games, who do you hear? It's me. So I know what I did cast back then, and my grudge with Smeb, it was the opposition. It was announced that it was Faker on one end and Smeb on the other one, and these two players didn't have anything in common in terms of skill level. Faker was miles ahead, and I really hated the narrative of him being the rival of Faker. And I casted this game, and people were like, no, it was so good, you don't. And I'm like, no, you do not understand, because you weren't there, and you have to accept it, and we just move on, and there is no reason to be upset. I commented the games, and it is sports, man. I mean, CS probably like this. It's like, oh, this game was never good. It's like, oh no, he was really, really, really good. It's just you didn't watch the game, man.
No, the worst one for me, I won't do a big thing since it's a League podcast, but I'll give you a CS equivalent. The worst is this, Zaboutine. Well, remember in Counter-Strike, there was a version of Counter-Strike before CSGO, and obviously most people in the majority who played CSGO never played the original Counter-Strike. So, bro, they would tell me about the players who then played CSGO. Like, for example, in early CSGO, Forrest was still legendary, the amazing Swedish player. So I'd have a fan who themselves only knew Forrest from CSGO or a Frag movie or something like that, right? And they'd be telling me what Forrest was like and who he was in 1.6 when like I used to work in the same team as him, go to the events with him, stand behind his PC watching. So essentially I had an even better POV than a fucking demo. I could see like his hands move and the key. I could see it all in real time and I could talk to him at any time off camera. But then they'd be telling me like how he was as a player. Like, and he wasn't like that type of guy. Like he had the mentality of us like, what are we who are you? You can't. And then even worse, you know, it's like on social media. The worst thing on social media, bros, you click on them like, who is this person? And you know, in the bio, here's where I die inside every time. Remember, we're talking about topics 10 or more years older. Even the fucking Smeb one, by the way, guys, is about 8 or 9 years old. You have this comfort. It's when you click the button and you see in the bio, it says like 19. And you're like, I can't do this.
Yeah, 21.
There's no way. So why is that even in the bio? That's the rage bit, is that little age in the bio. Because then my brain starts doing that thing like, wait a minute, he'd been 3 when it happened. Like, oh, I can't. Actually, that rages me more than the opinion, mate. The opinion could be whatever. I know what you mean, though. It is true. You also have to realize that. Like, I used to have an old rule, which is just to know how much relevance to give people when you're doing a video. I used to do a rule that if anything's older than about 3 years ago, you should probably explain it as if the person wasn't there and didn't see it, because you're going to be amazed how many new fans will have come through the turnover. Yeah. And they really did start watching 2 years ago or something. It's actually why the sad thing about the whole T1 thing, where we get 1 billion of them go mental at us and get angry, is at this point, mate, I feel like it just becomes diminishing returns. Surely the more time that goes on, the less of them watched. Like, we're at the point now, mate, where I don't even think that many of them now probably saw when this roster was formed, when they first got the Gumayushi in there, and they were swapping Teddy out, and then they had Kana, and then eventually went to Z. I'll bet at this point, some of them really only joined when they won Worlds, and they've been 2-year T1 fans or something like that. So, unfortunately, in that sense, it's a losing battle, but don't worry. Give it a few decades and
we'll tweet it out. Yeah.
Hey guys, before we kick off this episode of Summoning Insight, I'm excited to announce that LFN has a new partnership with the game Mechabellum, which is developed by Game River and published by Dreamhaven. Mechabellum is a tactical auto battler, and you have a fearsome mechanized army that you pit against your opponents. And we're going to be running a tournament, so you will have a chance to compete against other LFN fans and hosts for cash prizes and in-game rewards on Saturday, December 20th, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern in the US, 7 a.m. Pacific, and 4 p.m. Central European Time. This will be a 5-hour-long 2v2 ladder tournament. So here's the deal. Like I said, 2v2 teams. The tournament will first run for 3 hours on Mechabellum's official ladder, followed by a semifinals and finals that will be broadcast. So that'll be really fun. Every participating player will receive in-game rewards, and there will be $500 of prize pool and more in-game rewards offered to the top performing teams. Everyone who participates and all of our LFN fans can receive a free in-game holiday reward if they use the code LASTFreeNation. So, if you're interested in playing along, and this is a great game, guys, there's a lot of tactical depth. We picked a game I think you guys will really enjoy if you're a competitive gamer. Plus, you could play internationally from anywhere because it's an auto battler, so it's all turn-based, so you don't have to worry about lag or mechanics. Please join the LFN Discord to participate in the tournament. It's linked in the description, and register in the Mechabellum channel. We will be tracking your wins on a custom API-powered leaderboard while you are laddering with everybody else on December 20th. And in order to participate, you have to share your Steam name and friend code in the Discord. If you're looking for a teammate, perhaps you don't have a friend who wants to play with you, make a friend in the Mechabellum team channel. So we'll be facilitating that as well. And we will be offering coaching sessions in the Discord server to help new players learn the game. So come join us. The LFN hosts are going to be a bunch of us playing and fans for some fun competition in Mechabellum this holiday season. Play in our 2v2 tournament on December 20th to have a chance to win $500 in cash alongside in-game rewards. Use code LASTFreeNation in Mechabellum to earn a special holiday-themed in-game reward. Viewers who tune into the live stream will have a chance to win random reward keys by being active in chat as well. And if you haven't tried it yet, guys, it's 40% off in Steam until January 5th. It's not an expensive game, so it's really fun. It's really competitive. It's all skill-based and thought-based. There's no pay to win, so there's no better time to jump in and try this great game. Buy Mechabellum, compete with us, have a good time.
Exactly. So what's on the menu today? What do we start with?
Well, actually, you know what? We can actually start in EU because within the French-speaking world, there's already some news, mate, which is, and I think this is an obvious angle to attack this first, Team BDS announced at the beginning of this offseason, bizarrely, like, we're going to do a rebrand, basically. That's what they said. And I was thinking, like, okay, I sort of get it, because I will say one area that feels obvious to me is, even though, like, I believe they're owned by, like, a Belgian or something like that, you know, to me, they're if you look at how long ago they joined the LEC before KC, I thought they would capture the whole French audience. They had Adam, if you remember, and fucking Nuke, but they originally they had it. But I feel like their entire fan base has just been scooped by KC, and then they're just the like, who the fuck are we? In the same way as if you're Giant X, you're supposed to be playing to me in Spanish, but it's like, but MKOI sort of got that. So you always are in a weird spot. And plus, I will say, I don't even know what BDS stood for anyway. And lastly, I don't know if you know this, but in America, BDS actually is the initials of the people who like protest Israel or something, bro. Something, because it's supposed to mean, yeah, it's supposed to mean like that you don't buy from business that is rich. So I wonder if that's even connected with it. If they just Googled it and like, wait a minute, why have we taken that as a... So anyway, the news comes out that they've rebranded as Shifters, whatever that's meant to mean. And presumably they're going to come up with a theme. And something. What do you think about this news when you heard about it? Do you know much about BDS?
I work with, you know that I do work with BDS, right? I'm a co-streamer for them. So I was in Geneva. I actually did a long form interview with their CEO for around an hour. So we discussed extensively about kind of the trajectory of the structure.
Oh, is it Swiss? Am I wrong? Is it Swiss instead of Belgium?
Yeah, they're Swiss, yeah.
Ah, Swiss.
And
okay,
so it's kind of a weird story because it's the root of BDS is one guy. It's a really one guy that built everything because he has a lot of wealth, and it's a lot of self-insertion into it. And I think throughout time, a lot of people gathered around this project and started building something that doesn't really reassemble to the former vision of the founder. And I think what led to the rebrand was last year, this founder made a statement on Twitter about abortion. And yeah, it was a statement about women and abortion that was, I mean, everybody to their own opinion about that, but it was definitely not something that you would expect a founder to express their opinion on the matter. And I think that there has been a profound disagreement, not only from the outside but from within, about BDS, from BDS. Meaning
this was almost a bit like, look, obviously on a hope a low level, it's almost a bit like Carlos and G2 type moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
And so this guy doesn't participate. Like he has been, you know, put outside. He actually stepped down like voluntarily because he has acknowledged the flow coming with that. And so there has been a discussion within the company about how do we want to go to the next phase, because we don't think that BDS right now represents what we want to give to the people outside of the team. We are a Swiss team, but we don't really connect with Switzerland. We are French-speaking team, but we don't connect with the French. And at this point, with everything that happened and this public statement really killed the brand as well, there's really no reason to move forward with this vision. So we're gonna rebrand around the values of the people that actually work at the headquarters in Geneva and in Berlin, around the team that actually had 2 World Championship on Rocket League, that had a very legendary team on Rainbow Six, that's trying to build very strong infrastructure even in Berlin in League of Legends, and try. So it's not really about, because they showed me actually like the rebrand and stuff like this, and they asked me what I thought about it. I'm like, it really doesn't matter, and I think you agree with that in esports. Like, a logo is what you make of it. If tomorrow they win 7 LEC in a row, everybody's gonna love them.
Yes.
If they shit the bed, nobody's gonna love them. enjoy the fact that it's the people who actually work day to day in the company, from the CEO to the middle management and stuff, that decided kind of gather around and say, oh, what do we want to give? What makes us different? We're going to give it to the people. And so that's kind of where the whole rebrand came. And there has been a new CEO that got appointed. His name is Alejandro. He comes from... he's half French, half Spanish, and he has been working in a lot of esports games from Millennium, OG guy from the scene.
Okay.
And he has a lot of like very good intuition in terms of sports, making decisions and stuff like this. And he's now leading the project and trying really to gather people around the values that are important to him and to the people that are working in Geneva. So I hope for the best. I'll be very certainly co-streamer for them next year. I am very interested in that move because I do think that BDS was kind of a dead brand. It was a dead beat. Because as you say, they came when KC arrived, like a year before KC arrived, and KC just swept the whole market the same way the MCOI swept the whole Spanish market. So no, you cannot rely on audience, like on fan numbers, to build an esports team. You need to go probably to the country, to the associations, to people, trying to find different way to exist, because the fandoms are already pretty much established at this point in League of Legends. I don't think there is enough fans of esports to beat Fnatic, G2, MCOI, KC. You already have like 95, and Los Ratones, you have 98% of the fans. So if you're a structure outside of this small group, you have to go with a different strategy, which I think they're aiming to do.
Yeah, I will say it. I get now if that scandal is the main thing that's in their mind as to why they wanted to like just rebrand essentially, so we just get away from that. People don't associate us with that or think things like, oh, wait, is that guy still there? Even if he's not, because you just saw BDS and you don't know that guy personally. Also, if anyone hasn't seen, this year feels like the year where people need to be really cut clear about which founders and CEOs, think about the KC one as well, which founders and CEOs are actually involved and who was just like originally a founder. Because the same thing happened in KC, if people don't know, there was like a mini scandal with that person. But as far as I know, they barely had anything to do with KC. Now, that was like years ago, they set all that stuff. It was that woman who was involved with a bunch of stuff. So I think for fans, though, it matters because obviously they love the drama angle. I know what you mean, though. I do think that's why I said the thing about KC. I do think like what is BDS like? As in League of Legends, especially when Adam went and then they let Shio go as well. Okay, you have Nuke and then you have Striker. That's about it. That's the only thing that still connects in any way to me to what BDS used to. You don't even have Labrov anymore, so you don't have any of the players. You've rebranded. You had a very sort of whatever meh season that didn't work out, and it is true they have essentially like taken a big step back in terms of like fan branding, etc. Whereas I feel like they had their own little group of people the year before when they were still relevant and they were like third best. They were challenging to go to finals. They had like a little beat, but I do think KC just took all those people, and I think what people
they
are
even took their
realizing.
content creator.
Oh, really?
The person who was making the content for BDS, his name is Zaboutine, is a French dude, and he actually left BDS at the end of year 2024 to go, and he was making the content and the socials for KC in 2025.
Because I do think
really, they took everything.
Everyone can't have the business model of we are the most popular team among French speaking, but there can only be one of those, unfortunately. And especially if at the moment they're better than you in the game, you also don't have any route to attack. Like that's half the issue. Because I know what you mean. I do agree with the logo part. Like the best example ever is G2. Before they were rebranded to G2, they were Gamers 2. And because at the time, the entire brand, if people don't know, originally it was never supposed to have a perks because the whole point of the brand was it was Ocelot's vanity project to get himself back into the LEC when he could get promoted, to sort of prove to people like SK, like I'm the brand, not you, basically. Because I've heard when he was in SK, believe it or not, Carlos was quite an ambitious person. Back in the day in SK, he supposedly turned to his and my boss at the time, who ran the whole company for like 15 years, and said to him, like, how do I become the CEO of SK? And that guy was sort of like politely like, well, you don't, because that's me. And obviously I'll never give you that job. Like, you can do like I can promote you, but you'll never be that. And so this is why Carlos in his own way, like him or don't like him, I tell you what, he's a fucking ambitious person. In some ways, he is like an Elon Musk of esports because he went and did his own project. And by the way, everyone, when it was Gamers 2, if you remember, everyone used to love it every time he failed. He failed like 2 or 3 times to get in playing himself. And everyone loved just laugh in his face. At the time, by the way, he had to pick up complete cast-offs, people that like no one would have had them in their top challenger team. Because remember, people already like the Cloud9s of the world had their challenger teams. They already had top players. They already had the scout. So the cool thing was when he rebranded to G2 and got perks was basically around the time of the rebrand, they got immediately into the ULCS. And because the first thing they did was tear off 4 straight titles, and then the second year go to the MSI finals. Bro, you know, it took less than 2 years before no one could remember the Gamers 2 shit. Suddenly everyone's like, this is cool, like G2, I'm in Horton Perks. He's like my new favorite player. Oh shit, they got the best one at the bottling. I know what you mean. Opinions and reputations change so fast in this industry. I don't hate the move, but the key thing here is you've got to succeed now with this brand. You've got to start at 0. You've got to sort of build up again. But if anything, we can tie this into the game. I do think after this year, it probably is the perfect time to do a rebrand, like I said, because if a lot of your things were past connections to players or being an elite team, that's to be rebuilt, mate. Like at the moment, BDS, they do look like more of like a mid-table to bottom half team. Like they've got to fight. Let's ask this question first. What do you think of BDS going into next year? Because obviously the big drama to me was they did that weird thing where they themselves said basically like, on the one hand, we're signing Striker to an extension, but then also he himself made that bizarre comment that was sort of like, if I don't make it to Worlds, I'll follow my own sword, as it were. Like, I'll remove myself. But the joke being, even though he didn't make it to Worlds, and by the way, it's far from it, they were just sort of like, don't do that. Just stay. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough. Like, so apparently Striker stayed. So what do you think going forwards with this project?
So I think the tweets has been more misunderstood by the French audience than the English-speaking audience, because everybody was certain that he would resign if he doesn't make Worlds. Because I had an interview with him and he said, no, I don't want to resign for sure. But since BDS wants to extend me, I do not want them to commit on something they don't want. And I don't want to settle. So if I don't manage to get to Worlds, which is my objective, I will let them make the decision to break my contract at the end of the year, because they can have a shift in desire and just let me explore the market and explore if there are coaches that could be more competent for the next years. But if they want to keep working with me, I'd be very happy to work with them again. I just don't want to be that guy that get the signature before failing, and then after I fail, I'm still held to my contract, like Larsen situation, and I don't want to become what I'm fighting against, so I leave them the opportunity. And discussing with the CEO, he said very clearly, he said, my objective was to keep both Nuke and Striker at the end of the year, and the summer split has been very hard for both, and almost to a breaking point where there were desire maybe to look on the market for different opportunities. And I think the CEO did something right, which is bring them, right facing each other at the table in Paris and say, okay, guys, we need to talk it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least we're going to try. And eventually they just walk back home with the intention to work together next year. So they keep Nuke and they keep Striker. And everybody around the table acknowledge their fault, because obviously when a sports year, like a sportive year, doesn't work, it's the players, it's the sports staff, right, the coach, but it's as well the management. And I think that everybody had to acknowledge their fault. So moving forward, they decided to change some things within the company, as well as within what's happening in Berlin. But they will still move forward with Nuke and Striker. And they try to go from a blank page with like real trust, not like, PTSDs, because a lot of players, they resign and in their head are like, yeah, I don't trust, but I'm still going to go for the one more year. I think that they are genuinely excited to work together again, and it can be a good year, but it must reach the breaking point for this roster and for these people within the team. But I think, fortunately, I think the new management is, as I say, they comes from the sports part of the industry and not the business part of the industry, and that does play a lot in how you keep your talents. Because everybody who has worked backstage knows that drama happens pretty much on a weekly basis. And you have to extinguish this fire if you want to have long-term success. Because if you change a player whenever there is, a bad scream or a fight or a disagreement or a bad split or bad result or a lost final, you never get anywhere. Mithi was toxic. Everybody knows it. He was a great player. Carlos, back in his days, was toxic.
Absolutely.
I can find plenty of players. Perks was pretty toxic as well. But if you take everything at face value, you're like, oh no, you've been naughty, just get out, go to Fnatic, then you sell your best players. And I think that's great that BDS was able to keep Bob Striker, which I think is a phenomenal coach. Has flaws like every coach, but I think he's a really, really great coach. And Nuke, which I think is the best laner this year, probably the best in terms of pure laning. He's the best laner in the LEC. Has flaws as well, I think, later in the game. But that's a good foundation for a team to have Nuke. When you look at everybody imported in Korea, BDS has Nuke, which I think is a huge, it's a leading start for me.
By the way, I actually want to ask something, which is, what is the reputation within the French scene? Because obviously he himself was in KC. In fact, if people don't know, it's one of the ways I first became aware of Striker, because he was the KC coach the season they had Reckless. And as far as I know, he made this himself totally public. Reckless is the reason he left this team, because basically within the team, I'll tell you, as I said in that video, the part that maybe he couldn't say out loud, which was there was like a divide within the team where I think he wanted to bench or like punish Reckless in some way for being a diva. And basically at the time, the org was trying to be like, no, he's like a giant name and all the sponsorships are going to be tied to him, so we can't possibly do that. And Striker sort of like took it as a moment to do a gesture to show that like no player should be bigger than the team. And he basically told them like, right, I'm going to leave this job then. Like that'll be the end of me as a coach. And that's how he was available for BDS. So first of all, I actually do see him as quite a principled person. I know very few people, mate, who would do that. In fact, as I revealed in that video about Reckless, it actually was the other way with the Fnatic coaches, bro. They also didn't like that Reckless was a diva, but when all the players wanted to bench him for one of the worlds, it's actually the one they ended up going to the finals of. The coaches had to be like, look, we can't do that though. Like it'll ruin all of our careers. Like we can't all just like lose a world to teach this guy a lesson. Like we have to just like hide this information and just play and be professionals. So there's very few people in the industry I think would have the balls. What, by the way, probably the most famous Western League of Legends player ever, no matter what anyone thinks. Like if you go and check out, he's still the most searched. He has an insane amount of fan base. To go against that shows me like you have some balls as a coach, but also, and I say this by the way, Zaboutine, as someone who I can tell you, I am blacklisted by the BDS org. There's a reason you don't get to see any of their players or staff on any of my content. So I actually should have the opposite bias to what I'm about to say. I actually just think he's a banging coach in general, mate. Like if you look at what he's worked with, he never took like players who were mega before him and made them good. Like he took people I didn't even think would be good in the LEC and sculpted them. Like, mate, I remember when Nuke first came in the LEC, he looked like he was going to be here for 5 minutes. He had to replace Abaddar here. He was shit. And then even worse, his alias was Nuclear Int. It's like, oh, you haven't even give yourself a chance. Like the meme's right there. Like you're fucking cooked. Like, and at the time there was no massive French fan base, by the way, to support you and defend you. I thought it was like, get this guy the fuck out. He would have been Checoladed times 1,000. In fact, I think Checolad was probably better than him when he came in LEC. So the idea of that person, because I agree, mate, last year, Nuke was actually a pretty fucking top player, actually. It was only, if you look the first few years, like he stuck with him for all that time. He helped him get over the hard times. I can tell you as well, they definitely could have replaced him as a player if they thought Nuke was that good and there was other people better. As far as I know, Striker vouched for this person and stood by him and said he'll be better than a Larson and these sorts of people. And at the time, that would have been a laughable statement, by the way. Everyone would have said, you're a moron, of course not. So I think it's kind of cool the way he's done the squad so far. I even do think that if you're Adam, the real lesson you should be looking in the mirror is, how did I lose a coach like that? Because even though he benched Adam, bro, he tried to do that for the greater good, you know, to sort of save this guy from himself. And all I'll say is, no matter what you might think about Adam being like the best part of Rogue, he has sort of fucked his career up due to what happened in BDS. And I think actually someone like Striker would have been very loyal to a player like that if they'd have sort of like learned their lesson and come back into the fold, as it were. So I personally, I'm mad biased, mate. I don't care that this year's roster was scoffed and it didn't work and Irrelevant was shit. And then they did that weird Bacada move where they spent $1 bazillion and it didn't work. And they get, look, I know to a fan, they're all on the most recent split and what have you done for me lately? I think this guy seems like he's got so many like skills as a coach. What is the perception within the French scene? Do people actually rate him? Is he controversial? What's he like?
What you know better than anyone that talking on the internet deserves you because when Striker, he doesn't talk a lot, but when he talks tough usually, and he's not afraid of saying like loud and clear his opinions. I think more than any population I know on earth, French people hate that.
Okay.
They do really hate confidence. They like, it is very important for French people to it's much better. The best thing is to be fake humble. Fake humble is like, you're loved by French people culturally, saying I'm good at this. Even you can be world champion, right? you say I'm good at this, people were like, no, it's better to say, yeah, I'm doing my best. You know, that's the culture in France. I've been raised in that. I never understood that. Every time in class, in my life, I say, oh, I'm good at that. They're like, how pretentious are you? I'm like, but that backs me up. Like, I'm actually good at that. So because Striker, I think, has a lot of confidence in what he does, and he is not afraid of saying what he thinks, a lot of people are waiting around the corner to see him fail. Right. Which I think you really get, right? Because I mean, you go on social media pretty hard as well. And I think that there is a misconception between someone being a good human, right? And someone being annoying on social media or disagree, or someone you disagree with. And I think a lot of people disagree with Striker and they vouch for him to fail because they have this confirmation bias where because he makes me feel bad, I wish him bad things. But I can tell you, I was in Berlin watching him play. He's one of the most, like, he's straight in his shoes, doesn't lie, doesn't cheat, does his best. I mean, very few people would have made a statement of like, if you don't want to work with me, fire me. He stood by his decision. I think keeping Bukada, for instance, is kind of a statement saying, we didn't make it work. It's on me. We're not going to fire this guy. We could find probably an upgrade. And it's not because we paid a lot of money, but I think this guy can work. So we're going to still stay with him, risking maybe a split or two, but we're still going to go. I vouch for this guy as much as I can because I have mad respect about the fact that, and that's because when he started as a coach, we had few calls. And one of the few things I told him is, you're going to die eventually as a coach because this industry is just ungrateful. So die on your heel, on yours, right? Yes. It doesn't matter. Just lose with your values. Yes. He's the embodiment of that. And I respect him so much because it's like, if I fail, he has a master. He's an engineer, so he can just, switch back to like a normal job. It's like, I'll do that as long as I can, but I won't do it my way. And just, I have so much respect. And the structure within the BDS office, like, he's the first arriving at 9 a.m. He's leaving every day at midnight. Outworks everyone, super professional, super respectful. Like, I cannot state how much better than a lot of the coaches I've been able to see in my career he is. I respect him a lot. But that's my own opinion, right? Personal take.
Sure. I definitely know what you mean on that last point, because that is actually a problem I've had a lot of the time with coaches, because sadly, the more you get to know them, not just watching as a fan, you realize, I mean, I'm sure you're in this position yourself, sometimes they have to publicly take the blame for something that privately they had no agency over at all. Maybe they didn't even choose to kick a player. They didn't choose to sign the player. They get told to change something. Like an example might be, you can't bench this player, or you can't tell him to do X, Y, and Z because we've decided, he's too valuable, or his contract's the most important one and we can't move him on. So in fact, maybe you have to apologize to him even though he's in the wrong. And I can tell you, when you get these stories, often the first thing you say to someone like that when they get fucked over as a coach and you find out they sort of like, they were almost part of the process of them getting fucked over, is you want to just say, like, why did you let them do it? But I understand a lot of people make the compromise. They want the job, they want the money. Sometimes they just don't know if there's anywhere else in the industry. There's fear, scarcity mindset going on. But one thing I have bad appreciation for is, as you say, whether someone succeeds or fails, I like it if they do it with, like, it was them. I would say the same thing if you were going to make some sort of artistic endeavor. If you were going to make a movie, make your movie, bro. Make it totally your vision. If it fucking sucks, okay. But the worst thing ever would that be that either it sucks, but you didn't make the change that made it suck, or it was good, but it could have been way better when you let people change it a little bit. So I have always thought, as a coach, if you hire especially a coach with a big personality like him, you should let them essentially have as much control as possible. Then also, by the way, for you as an org, it's also going to help, because then if they fail, you'll know they weren't the right person for you. But I think if you get in there and you fucking tie their hands and you make a few decisions for you have no idea where you're at that point in time. You just lost. So I know what you mean. If I'm going to succeed, let it be on my terms, but also let the failure be on my terms. Then also you can leave that project, mate, and go out. Listen, I tried everything I could. I did all the things I wanted to. It just didn't work. The worst is going to be being haunted, like a lot of them are, by the story of like, but then I wanted to do this, but they told me we can't. It's like, oh, those are the worst stories, mate. That's worse than the failure.
I mean, my experience is I did what I wanted. I did very few of what I wanted, but most of what I wanted, I did it at Uptech. And the year I did with Immortals, my ties were my hands were super tied with a lot of factors. And compromises is no one's happy around the table. I did a lot of compromises because I think I was so tired of the 2 years of uptake. After 2 years, I was like, I'm just gonna try to keep my spot. Immediately fired. You get, because you get worse. That's the thing. It's not an industry where you can actually survive if you don't control what's happening, and if you start working with some players because this and that, and then you have to tamper with different egos, and you waste so much time and energy that just being laser focused works. Like, that's the Katie, the story of Katie is just they didn't tilt the whole year. They won, they lost, they had immense fumbles, but you look at them at the final, they feel fresh. And that's the thing. I speak about the players, but that's the same at the staff and the management level. It's like, you need to not burn out yourself, and there is nothing that burns you faster than putting work against your own will. This is horrible. So as a coach, anyone who wants to work as a coach at any level, I would recommend die on your own terms. You will lose anyway. This is an industry where you try to survive more than 5 years and it can get fired. The Dylan Falcos and Reaper, eventually, there are anomalies. Most of people will leave the industry after 3 or 4 years. Do what you want on your terms. And if the people around you don't want, leave. But don't try to stay, because you're going to get fired anyway.
Yes. No, I know what you mean. The mistake is, this isn't like being in class, and if you just keep your head down, the teacher doesn't ask you. Eventually, they fire you anyway. Like, the odds are, also, let's be real, if you just do what other people say and you don't agree with it as the coach, it's unlikely you're going to win, and winning ultimately is the only thing that extends your stay anyway. Eventually, the joke is, even Dylan Falco will probably get fired from G2 one day, unless he just himself decides he succeeded so much he chooses to step down. One day they'll also go, but maybe this guy'd be better, or wow, this guy won the last chapter. It all happens to everyone. I know what you mean. Okay, what about this though? There's one last thing about BDS, which is the rumor goes that as well as they're going to get that Paduck guy as ADC, the rumor is they've also got Trymbi to come. He was obviously on that VKS, a Brazilian team, but I suppose he's coming back to Europe. He's going to join BDS. What do you think about this?
I think Trymbi is underrated as a player. I think he was really good. I mean, you saw clearly his team at Worlds was doing things, right? It's been a long time I haven't seen a Brazilian team do moves, like play the game, right? And I've always thought like he was kind of a underdog, but I always have fears with these players that actually are very good when you watch them, but nobody seems to keep them. And usually it's a behavioral cause. I've heard that he can be hard to work with when he's under pressure himself, and that he needs a lot of factors. Like the game needs to go through him quite a lot, which for support you might be saying, oh yeah, it's really great, like Kaya does this and that, but I think flexibility at the end of the day is so important, especially in the modern era of League of Legends where everybody plays everywhere. And you cannot really like set one player to make the decision about how the game is played the way you did in 2014 or 2016. So for these reasons, I have fears about Trymbi, because when I look at this set of players, right, Rooster, Bukada, Nuke, Paduck, and Trymbi, there is no real reason that this is going to become like on a human side, a group, like a bunch of guys that like, shoot the shit together, have fun, talk, because obviously first there is 2 Korean, one that just arrived last year and one that's just arriving. 2 people that speak French and will exchange in French at some point, because French people tend to do that. And then you have Trymbi that's in his own corner and is going to ask for a lot. Striker on top of that, who's not the easiest sometimes to work with, but that comes with that's the part of the package. You cannot get everything. I think that from the game standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. I have a fear. I call it a probability of disaster in my content in French. I think that BDS has a decent probability of disaster, bringing someone like Trymbi in this environment if the human side of things is not controlled well. But in terms of game, especially with the changes that are happening this year, and the fact that laning seems to be extremely reinforced to the detriment of roaming and playing just deep in the enemy vision all the time, I think Trymbi is a phenomenal hire for that. They didn't know, but it's like they knew, because laning is going to be so important. And I think lane-wise, him and Labrov are probably 2 of the supports that are like way underrated. It's just this year was not about laning at all. So you saw all these guys just shine because they can roam around the map. But when it comes to 2v2, you're very happy to have Trymbi in your team.
Trymbi, for me, mate, is one of those players. I'll put him in the same category as a Jizuke. There was even rumours, bro, my boy Upset might be in this position this off-season, where something happens outside of the game that means teams don't want them, or sometimes they'll get in a position where there's just no space. Like there was that rumor that if Upset didn't get the gig into Fnatic again, where he was literally the MVP of the league, he was going to have no team. And that even, put it this way, even squads where, like, I think he's way better than Super, for example, but MCoy's not going to kick Super. Super's their guy, and they've already told Super he gets another year. So there was all these players that would be better, and he wouldn't get it. Same thing with Trymbi. Like, it's one thing, mate, when Rogue didn't want him or whatever, and then I was baffled when Fnatic decided to move on for him, but whatever. The idea he ends up in, like, what would have been CB LoL. It's like, what? He can't even be in an LTA team. Like, what is going on? So I know what you mean. That is a bit alarming, because put it this way, you can say GMs are stupid, but they all, if they watch the game, were seeing how good this guy was in all the teams he was in. Like, every team he's in, at a minimum, they have a honeymoon period, mate. That's really good. Like, he turned Fnatic around. I thought he was excellent in Rogue. At the end, he looked like one of the better players in the position. Yeah. And then, as you say, I don't give a flying fuck about the LTA South, mate. But when I was watching that team at Worlds, I think this squad isn't bad, actually. So to me, his fingerprints are all over all these teams. And I've heard the same thing. If you ever watch a comms video, he's the guy who never shuts the fuck up. So he clearly does have a lot of input in the style of the team. But I know what you mean. It's like, what's weird is, normally when I ask, spoiler, I'm only able to find out if someone's really actually terrible, like they're a bad person or whatever. People will tell me that privately, you know, they'll just say, just don't use my name, but yeah, he's a dickhead, or that guy was like overrated or whatever. No one's ever told me this about Trymbi, bro. Every time I try investigating, basically, I don't even think, mate, it's like there's an incident that gets him kicked. It's almost like he just has the wrong vibe or something, you know what I mean? Because people always say the same thing. They use euphemisms. They go, oh, he could be a bit tricky to work with, or like, you know, he has like strong opinions, and like, you know, sometimes, but they never ever even use the normal words. No one's ever said he was toxic to me. No one's ever said, oh, you know, he'll like argue and then he won't let it go. So I don't get it. There's some sort of a weird vibe that's just off with him and his past teams. And people really have picked, like, to me, the craziest one ever was that like trade where they traded Advien for him. I remember thinking, if I was Fnatic, I'd be like, what the fuck? That's like the other way around. That's like, so I give you my magic beans and then you give me the cow, right? That's how this, what are we doing here? Like, this is nuts.
I'll take the word of my president. This is the worst trade history. There you go. The worst trade of history of trade deal ever. Maybe ever. Something like
spoiler, Advent isn't even in the league anymore. Like, that is such a bonkers trade.
This is baffling. But
it tells you that
right?
There was, it just tells you that within the squad, though, people just didn't believe it. Yeah, Rogue wanted the Advent guy instead of Trymbi.
Wasn't it with Reckless, though?
No. This is when Reckless had already quit the game. He role swapped at this point.
Okay. I don't remember, but yeah, I remember that.
For Advien, mate. It's nuts.
It is egregious. This is one of the, I think in recent memories, this is the single worst trade I've ever seen in the LEC.
It was bad.
It is.
And as I say, they went to Worlds with fucking Trymbi. Like, Fnatic got better from this deal, mate.
I mean, I believe Trymbi is going to make this team better. I know he's emotional. I know it's not easy when there are subgroups within a group to exist as an emotional person. So I hope that the performance part of BDS is gonna able to get the best out of him. And if they do, it's gonna be signature that BDS does the thing right, which is cherry picking a player that nobody wants and activate him. But they did it with Labrov. Obviously, you're gonna say no, G2 did it better. I agree. I think G2 does wonders with their players. But if there is one team that took that guy that never done anything ever and then switched to become one of the best support in the league, it's BDS. And I think people tend to forget that the flip of Labrov happened at BDS. The flip of Nuke happened in BDS, as you said. And I can only hope that Trymbi is going to follow the same path.
No, I'm with you. In general, I think it'll look bad from this year because Irrelevant got worse and then the Paris guy never made it. Those are actual outliers at this point in time. Like, the pattern, I agree with you, is they take either a piece that hasn't made it yet and he becomes very good, or even better, these ones where you essentially like recycle someone. You take someone everyone else has thrown away, and as the saying in English goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So I think they put it this way. I reckon in this squad as well, when I think about what Labrov brought to the team and how pivotal he was to their team, I think that's what Striker wanted from Paris. Everyone said this Paris guy was going to be this like generational player. He wasn't. So I think Trymbi's a pretty good like gamble to do that kind of role instead. You obviously don't have Shio anymore. So I think it's an interesting approach to take. And if you look at where the other Koreans are, etc., these are like the right positions to round that squad out. Because I also think as well, the other thing with this team is, I thought the Ice guy did a fabulous job, mate. I don't know why they didn't want to keep him, why he moved on, whatever. But the Paduck guy, if people don't know, is supposed to be a talent from Korea. Like, that's an interesting move as well. So I think if you look at this squad, pretty sweet. I'm a bit of a homer, I told you, for Striker. So I think he'll make it, mate. I think this squad could work. And I think if you look at the other teams, it's still going to be hard to get a world spot because it is only 3 spots available, but they can contend for that last one. They can be like 4th, 3rd. I think it's plausible. I also do think that like Trymbi should be a very good player. He could contend to be one of the better supports, and support's actually a pretty stacked role in Europe. So I'm in general in favor of all these moves, man. I'm interested for BDS next year.
I think it's one of the most underrated because people like I've had a lot of people, I exchange with my audience about the off season, and everybody tells me they're going to be like 6th, 8th, things like this range, and I'm like, I think that's one of the most underrated team because like just the pure horsepower of these players. If you put them just against Koi, Koi has a way better like automatism and macro and movement around the map. But just like, especially next year, like if you read the patches or like saw all the announcements, it's like you go back to your lane and you keep laning and laning and laning. It's like you're gonna have to, like Mirvin's gonna have to lane for 15 minutes against Rooster now. Not like 4 minutes, not 6 minutes, and then he can swap. He's gonna have to straight play 16 to 20 minutes of pure hell against Rooster. And I do believe that like Paduck and Trymbi can be one of the best duo lanes, and people are gonna have to lane extensively against Nuke. And for this reason, when I look at the pure horsepower on other teams, I do feel it like BDS is one of the strongest player-to-player team in the league. But I might be wrong, but I feel like they are mad underrated for the next year.
And from seeing how different Labrov was in G2, bro, to BDS, it can't have been Labrov. Like, it has to be Striker and his fingerprints. Because if you saw that team that had the Adam, Nuke, Shio, like me, that team was like one of the best. It has to be coaching, bro. I'm telling you. They look like one of the best coach teams I've ever seen in Europe playing around in directives. Like, their understanding of setup. Again, I'm sorry. Listen, I don't speak fluent French, but I refuse to believe when Adam speaks French and he's a genius. What the numbers mean, Adam? How do you figure out he's not doing that? He just knows what to do with his protocols and when to come and join the team and when to and they made Labrov look like fucking core JJ or something, mate, setting up these fucking angle. But then when I saw him go to G2, wasn't doing any of that shit. So it's like I also feel like if you give this team actual good laning and then they can do that as well, that's the formula right there to be a contender, mate. You could be one of the better teams in the league.
100% agree. We'll see. When I say that, they say, "Oh, you work for BDS." They pay you to say nice things about, which is far from true, right? Like, I have an agreement with BDS, which is when I started working with them, I was like, my signature is I say what I think, and I cannot destroy my position on my media just for like some short-term cash. They're like, no problem. You say whatever you want. We'll make it work. So I really have been extremely critical towards BDS this year on many points, but I feel like they deserve hope, at least for them, because when I look at the other trends from the other teams, a lot of teams are mad overrated for next year. But we'll see.
Yes. Well, here's the thing. One thing Striker could do to wipe away the bad memories of this year and how worthless it was. Like, irrelevant, he's gone. Delete him from your memory immediately. Ice, listen, we loved you. You did a great job. He's already gone, though. We're on to you. What he could do, though, is he could get an aura frame, which is one of the sponsors of this show. Because if he did, the best thing about the aura frame is, one, you can get it preloaded. So if I was to make an aura frame for Striker, I'd put in all the good times. I'd put in when Nuclear Int became like a top player, actually. I'd put in where Adam went from being the 3-trick player to, if you remember actually at the beginning of 2024, bro, you've had like the meta champions he was playing. Suddenly he could play Renekton. He was playing all sorts of stuff I never saw. So you take out the good time. Also, by the way, the good thing about the aura frames is, as well as all these photos and you can preload them, it also can do video. It can do like, I think, up to 30 seconds of video. So you could even put in some of those beautiful objective takes at the dragon, luring people into fights, turning the tide against the Fanatics and the G2s of the world, as they were able to do, usually for 2 games in a series, but listen, it's 2 games more than certain other squads in the LEC. Also, if you're going to have idiots like Adam in your team, things better be really easy. They better have a very simple set of protocols. The beauty of Aura Frames is super easy to use. In fact, if you have a grandma, a girlfriend, an auntie that you want to buy one and set it up for, you can just set it all up for them at their house. As long as they've got Wi-Fi, as soon as you've bought the actual device, you don't pay any like cloud storage fees. You're basically like almost unlimited storage. You just upload, you can do it all remotely. You can have remote access set up. You and your family members can put stuff on there. And I always tell people the reason why this is actually one of the things that we've been able to sell a lot of on this show, and actually the joke of is Monty's bought a bunch of them. I've even got a whole bunch as gifts for people. Is I think it's actually one of the most slam dunk examples of a gift someone would never think to buy for themselves. But if you buy it for them, especially like I say, like your auntie, your mom, your grandma, it's actually like probably the best gift you could give them, because essentially when you're not calling them every week and you're not visit them every 3 months, they can sort of keep involved in your life because you can just set it up remotely, upload your latest pictures, the same ones you put on Instagram, just take out the bikini shots of your ass or whatever, ladies, if there's any women watching this show, whatever. I was just polite pretending that, whatever. Basically, just put up the cool ones and then they get to still feel like they're part of your life. They'll get updated, they'll see what's going on. And I think that's even a cool angle. In fact, whenever I walk past the frame and it switches to a new picture, sometimes I even go, oh, where's that from? And then it kindles the memory in my brain as well. I remember what happened. So, of course, if you're going to get one, though, you want to save some money. So, for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling carver mat frames by using promo, it's easy to remember, summoning, all one word, SUMMONIG, at checkout. That's AURAFrames.com, promo code summoning. This deal is exclusive to listeners and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays and support our show by mentioning us at the checkout. Offers vary by country, terms and conditions apply. As far as I know, it actually is mainly, that deal is based around UK, USA, and Canada, because it's obviously like players that speak English. But what I was told, I heard this on other podcasts, is if you're from another country, you can always just check at the checkout, like try putting in the code and see if it applies like a regional discount, because sometimes those are available. Anyway, thank you to Aura Frames. I actually do think that's a banger gift, by the way. Unironically, that is one of those ones where if we never sponsor again, I would still buy one. Actually, it's good. It's one of those things where no one ever thought, wait a minute, the technology of a picture frame is actually quite outdated because you can only have one picture in there. I often compare it to the Kindle. Everyone goes, I prefer real books. Mate, when you're on a plane, you're going to like having 300 books in a thing that big. You can't bring 300 books with you, can you? It can only be like 4 or whatever. They're all going to be stacked up. So anyway, I think it's a mad upgrade. So we'll keep going. All right, you referenced it there. You're not that impressed with the LEC GMing in this offseason. What is there a team coming to mind immediately when you're saying that? Is there someone that's kind of underwhelmed or let you down?
I think that Vitality.
Okay.
My relationship with Vitality is really, really bad over the years. I can't genuinely sense how do you say it? Like a good nose at Vitality. I feel like they always come, in market finance, you have the early buyers and stuff. The guy that always buys at the peak and then the thing like crashes,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
I don't know how you call them in finance. It's been years. Vitality really feels like this for me. It's like I do understand where they come from. They kept Karzi, which I think was the biggest letdown of the year. I think he was probably one of the single worst ADC, because the problem is the flows. I think in your career you arrive with a set of like strength and flows, and then the question is like how much you're gonna outweight with one or the other. The problem with Karzi this year is usually he's very good, but he dies. But this year he just died, right? Like we made everyone play with Karzi so far. He is saying Niski, Fleshy. Karzi still dies. He dies so much for no reason, without really yielding anything out of his leads. They kept him, but only they kept him. They were like, who do you want to play with? Humanoid is real, like, how do you want to play with to Karzi, right? It's like, oh, we're going to keep you. Who do you think is good mid laners? Like Humanoid. So Humanoid is really good at the game. He doesn't care about being good at the game, but he is. He started a YouTube channel. I saw that because I feel like he had this, urgency. You've seen it so many times. These pro players that are really good and think like nothing's gonna ever change, and then they are dropped, and then they start a YouTube channel thinking like people are gonna like rush to see them play, And it's like I watch his content and it has like 24 or like 50 views on his YouTube, and it's just him playing solo queue, which I think there is no like 1,000 terabytes of, and you can even have like all the POVs of Chovy. So why would you watch Humanoid and you could watch Chovy or any top, like, I don't know, Knights? So I think that the wind has turned for him and he was like not feeling very confident. So maybe he's gonna feel like, he's kind of like back behind the wall and he's gonna try hard again, which then would make Vitality a really strong team. It's just there is a lot of what if in this team. There is way too much what if. It's very good to recruit what if in esports. I think everybody who has worked in it would agree that you need a certain amount of what if in your team to actually reach the heights that the what if heights, right? The problem is Naknako is a wild card, Linsas is a wild card, Humanoid is a wild card, Kars is a wild card. Okay. So now you go back to Fleshy and you're like, okay, Fleshy, now you need to be the glue for 4 wild cards that have historically shown that they can lose a game by themselves. And Mac, the historical coach, is moving to a more managerial position. And now it's only Pad as a head coach, which I think was very good as individual coach. It just seems that, once again, Vitality, they're like, oh, we had Naknako, we picked a wild card, it worked. Let's just buy all of them. And to me, that is not how you balance a team. And it doesn't seem like people at Vitality, from years and years now, understand the building of team games. They are very good at seizing the opportunity of buying super big talents. I think on Zen, on Rocket League, Zaiwu on Counter-Strike. I don't know much about Counter-Strike, but I know that they have been able to like really secure long-term contract, and they know how to keep their player, make them happy, market them, brand them. They're great at this. Their business side is really good. But in terms of team building for the collective esport games, they seem so lackluster every year. Every year I look at their roster, I'm like 5th, 4th at best. Probably a disaster. 2 changes throughout the year. And next year, same thing. They're just wasting money at this point.
No, I know what you mean. Like, I'll put it this way. I think you nailed it, actually, with the description of the stock guy. Because one of the things that's really hard for me about Vitality is if you don't look at the context of the signings they made. Dude, they've made some amazing signings over the last, 5 years. If you think about it, right? The first Vitality that came in the league, more the YamatoCannon era, that was some BDS type project. You're taking lesser known players or a player people don't rate, think of their bot lane at the time, and you're trying to work magic with it, After the 2020 period for me, they're just signing, like you say, they're buying at the top. They're signing like fucking Perks at his peak. Alfari, when he's at the height of his fame. They had loads of it. They were rumored to get a Whippo super roster at one point in time. They themselves had that ball guy when everyone thought he was the next hot shit. They had upsets when he was really good. Yeah, they've made a lot of signings that on paper you'd think, mate, you could put this together and trip over and be in the finals of the LEC. But it never does work out. It seems like those players, it really is, you bought them at the top. That's always when it goes down, or it's never quite as good. They had Kazi when he'd been a champion in the LEC. They've had so many players, mate. It's nuts at this point in time. They had Vethio when he supposedly got his shit back together towards the end of the XL period. They brought him in. I mean, you can't get a break. I know what you mean. It's been really hard. That's why I'm not that surprised, even though it was a bit shocking because Mac and Pad are so well loved. I wasn't that surprised that CEO made that incredibly bold statement this year where he basically was like, look, if you don't get results, you're fired. I think that's a totally legitimate thing because the first thing I asked, put it this way, I'll give you an example. This actual exact phenomenon is happening in Counter-Strike, but with Team Liquid, which is weird because in League of Legends, Team Liquid's done a very good job the last few years transitioning between players, getting younger players, building a squad up. That's very good. So what's funny is in Counter-Strike, they have the same problem. They've bought a load of names that are all good, but they keep putting them in the rosters and it doesn't work. All these super team type rosters fail. And so to me, the same question you have to ask in League of Legends if you're Vitality is the question they're now asking in CS, which is there some sort of culture flaw here? Is there something about how we put these players or conceive of them working together that just doesn't work in reality? And that's the flaw. It's not that the input of players is bad, but it's that the output of the players is going to be based on things like what style do we play? How do we work with each other? What's the hierarchy even? Who's the captain of the team? How do we coach them, etc.? Essentially everything but the players. Because I do think the thing I've learned, even though on the one hand, Zaboutine, I would say I do think there's a lot of bad GMing. I also think it's because the emphasis on GMing has become so much more important the last 4 or 5 years. I do think if you looked at League of Legends for a solid, like, I think for 5 or 6 years, bro, it really was just, if you did a good enough job doing like what I call football manager, which is you do just try to get the best names you can and plug them in, that would like 75% work. You know what I mean? If you had a roster on paper, you'd be like, yeah, that like the joke would be the best. I think we've said this many times about Fnatic this year, mate. If you look at that Fnatic roster on paper, if you'd have made that squad, as in those players that existed and been this good in like 2018, that would probably walk to a final. You know what I mean? Like, there's almost no way that team couldn't go to Worlds. You look at the players, you're like, some of these are cracked out players. But you saw this year, a squad like Fnatic could completely implode and everything could be total shit and it could make the levels of all the players go. So I think that's the thing about GMing people are missing. It's that it's not even now about signing good players. It's about knowing really advanced things like what temperament does this player have? How's that going to fit with this guy being a bit edgy? Or for example, I mean, obviously in your case, the same thing happened in Immortals. Sometimes you have players that are all good, but will they actually be like, will they function as a squad together? Maybe when they put them all on the server, it does. Maybe some of them cancel each other out, you know?
The thing with Vitality, for instance, like the statement of the CEO, I tend to disagree with you because they hired him for a long-term project. And I think if you do a long-term project and after 3 splits you announce that, you're clearly part of the problem to me. Like I have grudges against the sports direction of Vitality across the board on League of Legends because I think that to reach greatness, I haven't heard of any team that reached continuous greatness without having a drop. Everybody is going through it. G2 went through it. I remember the bad years of G2. I remember the bad years of Fnatic at the beginning. I remember the bad years. Like, even Casey is going through it right now, right? Like, Casey is making a lot of good decisions on the paper, but it's hard. Winning is very hard because it's such a fragile thing. And you're hiring Mac and Pad, and you're like, okay, your vision is to bring new rookies and build something on the long term. Okay, we give you a long-term period. And then after 3 splits, a year and a half, you're like, if you don't make Worlds, we fire you. And then they make a good split. And then you eventually keep them. It's like, continuity is very important because if you have a culture, continuity, the culture should be, you know, like kind of the line you follow. Like BDS has a culture inside the corporation where there's like, if you don't follow this and you don't behave that way in Team BDS, you get out, right? We don't want you. We're going to keep coaches that do that. We're going to keep players that want that. We want to do that way. Vitality feels like we want to win. That's not a project. Winning is what everybody's like. That's the outcome, right? But how do you want to win? They have not a single idea about that. And like here, it's a new iteration. But it just feel like they're putting coins, you know, on a slot machine, trying to get for the 7 to align. But they never feel about it never feels like it's constructed with the idea of building something over the years. Because if this team fails, who do you keep? Who you are building around? Are you keeping Naknako? This guy is gonna go to like G2 to replace like Broken Blade, which is gonna be too old. And then who's gonna be your franchise player? Is gonna be Humanoid again? There is no idea of we're gonna go low-key for a year because these and these players can be good for the future. And then when the market's gonna be easier for us, we're gonna strike strong and then we're gonna become a super team. This has never been part of Vitality DNA, and that's why they consistently faded. The only 1 year they didn't care, they made Worlds. The only 1 year they didn't care at all, they made Worlds because at least nobody had pressure. Because I'm pretty sure that on top of that, when you work at Vitality, you have a lot of pressure on your shoulder. And I don't think it's a good environment to work in when you're a player.
By the way,
I'd love to say good things about them, but I can't.
This actually sort of goes hand in hand with what we said about coaching earlier, right? You have to somewhat free coaches to enact their vision. At the end, by the way, if you don't like it, of course, fire them, move on, get the person that fits your vision. But I do think this thing of like, I'm hiring you, because to me, I know what you mean. If you hire Mac and Pad, you hired them to be Mac and Pad, to be the guys they were in Mad Lions and that Spice or whatever the fuck. You want them to bring the same thing there, but then work with your team. Instead, this sounds like you bring them in and you're like, right, we want some of what you did, but then also because we're Vitality, like you have to win this year. It's like, Well, which is it? Like, am I here to like slowly build up a project and figure out which rookies? Because remember, surely everyone, this is what you call doing your due diligence in English, Zaboutine. Surely the people who hired them at Vitality were aware. The most famous thing about Mac is he doesn't just bail on rookies that fail and people that don't do well in the first split. Like, he thinks to himself, like, maybe there's a way I can adapt to this. Maybe like, famously, the joke is he would let like Hillisan in scrims as long as there was a logic to why he was doing it. Like, well, the pitchers would just bench him, mate, or go stop doing that. Like, so if you know you have someone with a different approach, I do think it's mad to not empower them, and even worse to then just be like, actually, that shit was all cool. I said in the interview about we'd give you time. That actually, I want results now. Like, you have to get there this year, because I actually think one thing Peter done with his time on Heretics has changed my perspective on is I do still think he also, look, he's the one who trained Mac to be like this. He is a mad bleeding heart, mate. He would have stuck with Ebby till the end of time, that Japanese top laner, you know. If he thinks you have good qualities, he will just like sometimes ignore the bad parts, etc. But one thing I do agree with him is, on a project like that, he said, if I do a project, that's actually why he didn't like them getting all the superstar players at the end of his time. His project idea is a 2-year runway. The first year I have time to fix these problems and I try to fail and I have time to get a person, it doesn't work. But the idea is I need 2 years, but the point is I can do a lot in 2 years though. That's like 4 different splits back in the day. That's going to be a bunch of off seasons. There's going to be a bunch of chances to boot camp. The point is we can make real growth there. I can develop these players. We can develop the system. Because another thing you have to throw in as well here is, a lot of people are acting like every League of Legends team plays the same way, and you can just chuck in players, put them in the game, and then they start winning. Because one thing I think is underrated, mate, is think about the Korean teams. If you go and look at the Korean teams the last few years, they might change 1 or 2 players, but they don't just do this thing we do in Europe where you just kick everyone and then just sign a whole new 5. Like, they keep the same core, or they keep the same shot caller, or they keep the same solo laners, and it's like you're working on one part of the squad. You know part of it's going to work. I feel like in EU, we are just oftentimes just going, right, that didn't work. Throw the whole thing away, start from square one again. But here's the worst thing, and I do think Vitality did this in League of Legends. I can tell you this happened in CSGO with G2. On the one hand, we're going to change the players, Zaboutine, but the pressure, we're going to act like the pressure's built up from the other teams, and that now affects this new squad. And it's like the new squad and the new coach had nothing to do with that pressure. Like, that pressure's on you as the org, not on the coach. Like, he came into a totally brand new thing, because he can't act like, yeah, but you didn't win those passes. I wasn't even here, mate. Like, my story starts today. So I know what you mean. I do think they've been a little bit misguided in terms of what they want.
Any team you think did a bad GMing on your end? Do you have one? Do you have one champion on your end?
Because here's the problem, mate. A lot of the ones
you
that
cannot
people...
say SK. You do not have the right to say SK.
Here's why I
because I think they're doing the best they've done in years.
I was going to say the same thing. Everyone wants me as a meme, Zaboutine, to say SK. Here's why it can't be SK. Because Mickey X isn't the GM. So SK killed it, bro. They got Mickey X to join their team. Then he convinced Wonder to come out of retirement, essentially, and give a fuck. And spoiler, if Wonder gives a fuck, he's going to be at least like the 5th best top laner. You know what I mean? I'm not saying he has to be old Wonder, but he could admit a player like that. I don't think he lost it, man. I think he just stopped giving a fuck, and it was at the level where everything else was going on his team. Mickey X can still be like the 2nd or 3rd best fucking player at his position. And then you look at the rest of the squad, it's not even that bad. Like, people will laugh at the leader one, right? Because leader himself is such an abrasive figure, and he's so extreme in his playing style. But the point is, he isn't bad at the game, mate. Like, he certainly has like his own strengths. And actually, Skeens, he's had enough years down in the fucking doldrums where I'm sure he learned from all the first time he was, funny enough, he was in Vitality many, many years ago. I think actually this is a decent squad. For SK, by the way,
best they built despite themselves. Like, I feel like the thing is, the bar is so low with SK.
Yes.
That's the thing, is like, people want to put SK, compare them to G2 and say, oh, SK is bad. But the truth is, you have to compare SK with SK. Yes. And now, if you look at the last 3 or 4 years of SK building, like having a lot of money and throwing half of that on irrelevance, and then getting Niski for a year, and then getting Loopy and Ryle and Luon and all these guys, it was a shit show. It was a cesspool. And at least here, there's an idea of like, okay, we have no idea of what to do. We are accountants. SK is a team made, like, the GM of SK is an accountant. Like, he goes, it's like, how much money? It's like, oh, that's not a lot. And then he has to make something. At least here, I don't know if it's the best team, but it is a team. This is a team of players that want to play together, that have some talent. And if the coach can make them play their style to at least 60% of the potential, they're going to be way more dangerous than the last 5 years. So I don't think that is about GMing at all. I would say
no.
it's a
But
decent
this way,
GM.
I
for
actually
SK standards.
think there even is an upside, people. Like, if I look at all their off-season roster moves, bro, it's not impossible this could be a top half of the table team. I think it's plausible.
So do you have one that you think it didn't do a good job in terms of transfer period?
I mean, put it this way, I just don't know enough about some of the players coming into Heretics to know how good the move was there. Not that I was a big fan of the old Heretics, but I just look at that one and I'm like, some of the players I fuck with, like, I for example, I think ADC, I think Ice was very good. Stend, I actually think was like an underrated player. Shio was mega, by the way. I think he was great. I just don't know like what their solo lane angles. Look, I thought the solo lane angle was one of the weakest spots this year, but I don't know if that's the right set of signs. What do you think of this squad?
The problem I have with Heretics is they've consistently proven they don't know what they're doing. It's a clear example of these teams that they just go with the flow and they make changes, but they don't seem to really understand what they want to build, because they had this mad roster with Jankos and VTO, but AB was running it down top side, and we're like, okay, just change the top laner, and then they brought Perks and Wunder, and then Perks left, and then they got Zero, and it was bad, but it was Zero and Flackhead that weren't good, but the rest, like Trymbi, Jankos, and Wunder were doing good job, but they didn't have the carries. So we are like, oh, you guys, you're going to change the carries. And they decided to fire everyone and then start from scratch building their own Flackhead. That makes absolutely no fucking sense. Making the team of last year. And once again, they had very weak carries. So we are like, oh, you're going to upgrade Camilo and Flackhead. And they just go with, I would say Ice is a little bit better than Flackhead. Serin is definitely better than Camilo, but there is a thing. I watched the whole LFL. I was co-streamer for LFL. He was the best mid laner in LFL by a huge margin. I think it was him and VTO. But at the moment, it mattered the most. Every single time, he played his worst games.
Right.
And on the opposite, Slowq, the mid laner of KCB, was not that great, but every time in finals, semi-finals, he was really shining in the important games. So I have my fears about Serin being able to be that guy. But when I look at the spread of players, I feel like the history repeats itself in Heretics, where they don't want to spend the money. You're not going to get Sheo and Sten forever. You have the jungle soup that's good. Please spend the money now. Don't be stupid. It's really, really fucking hard to secure Sheo instead. You can get Ice for cheap, because I don't think like everybody jumped on the Ice train, so it's good. Please get a good mid, like not just an upcoming guy. I do understand the idea of building. The problem is if Trasin and Serin are good this year, but not good enough to win something, and they're gonna be better in 2027. But this time Sheo and Sten will leave. So that's where like I think people don't understand this angle of GMing. There are times where you leave time for people, and there are times where you need to pull the trigger. And I think that was one year where they had to pull the trigger the same way they had Jankos and Trymbi, and they should have pulled the trigger. I feel like it's very underwhelming, and for me it shows that they do not understand how the market works, and they're gonna arrive at the end of this year saying, oh, we're gonna upgrade, Sheo is not gonna resign, Stan is not gonna resign, they're gonna leave, and then they're gonna be shit for next 3 years. And it's gonna just be a fumble.
No, I like the take, because I will say what I actually hated about the Vitality and Heretics teams this year is it's like they only figured out half of GMing. Like Vitality figured out the laners and they didn't have anything in terms of the support of the jungle. And then Heretics had the support of the jungle out of nowhere, were really good. And then you had these dog shit fucking laners. You're like, what are we doing with the team? Like the joke really was Flackhead was the best laner player, like as in like star type figure. And his whole job is to be like the impact of ADC. Like he's never supposed to be your fucking upset being the MVP of the league. So I know what you mean. Like if essentially, if Sheo has a year again in 2026, like he did in 2025, there's no way he'll be available as Zaboutine, because he'll be in like Fnatic or something, or he'll be in fucking G2 one day or something. Like, I think actually the coaches in the league rate that player. Like they look and they're like, look what he was working with. Remember, Camilo was fucking dreadful, boys. Like it just wasn't good. The Carlson guy was all right, like half the time, maybe. You know what I mean? You looked at their team.
Playing top, it's so easy to play top in 2025. You have nothing to do. I think that Camilo improved more than Carlsen, but the competition as a mid laner is 10 times more fierce in LEC, you can really play weak side Cassante every game, and people will be like, oh, he did a decent job. He didn't. I can find at least 5 guys in the eras that were doing better than Carlsen. This guy didn't deserve his job.
But to me, what shows the power of the supportive elements was, bro, Heretics was way better than they had any business being with that roster, mate. They used to hang in there with like the KCs of the world, and when they had their best squads, they literally were able to beat the Vitalities in the series, etc. Oh, the amount of game, like I actually think like it's like that's the most underrated part, is those parts you keep. But I agree. You've just gambled on the people to go around them. I'm with you. If you have those pieces, this is the year you invest and go all in. Then if you fail, okay, they'll leave. You start the project over again. Then you can go budget again. But I know what you mean. Bolster the squad around the players that are already good. Because I do feel like if you'd have put strong soul leaders around Chiyo, mate, you could be at Worlds this year. Like that would be actually on the table as a real plausible possibility. Because I think he's showed he's a top quality jungler.
Yeah, I mean, for me, he has replaced Razork in terms of tier list. I would say it's very hard to decide who was the best jungler of this year. I would give it to Skumon. I think from the late part of the year, I think he's number 1. Elioya is number 2. No discussion. Like Skumon and Elioya is 1 and 2. Yeah. And then the third place used to be Yike and Razork, but I think that obviously Sheo didn't have the time to compete at the highest level because his laners were not good enough to actually do that. But if you actually look at the games and the decision made, he has one of the most outstanding jungle performance of the recent years as someone in the losing team. Find me a jungler that were playing with terrible laners that was able to be the best player of his team consistently while not playing carries. That's incredible performance.
Yes.
And I believe that this guy, I mean, you saw BDS with and without him. You see Heretics with him. I think this guy is kind of a diamond in the rough, which is you slot him in any team and it's gonna work because he finds opportunities by himself. And it just makes me think of Razork at his early stage. But unlike Razork, he doesn't have the main character syndrome that I think is the downfall of junglers. And for this reason, I think he has probably more even potential than Razork as a jungler. I really look forward to see him in the top team eventually.
The problem with when you asked me the question, was there any bad GMing, is when I look at the what in theory are the real rosters we're going to have, there aren't, in terms of if I only look at the names, Zaboutine, most of these squads are fine, like even the gambles. But if I do it in context, because one thing I do always try to know someone who's a bit of an insider in League. In CS, I know more of the orgs and what they all pay, etc. But I have an idea in League. What I try to do as an insider is, I think we should, if we know things about like the setup of the org, how much money they have, what star power they can attract, we should judge you based on expectations in that sense. It should, like as you said about SK, you can't judge SK compared to G2 because that would be like judging fucking PSG versus whoever the shittest team in League One is. Like the League One team doesn't have the choice to sign superstar players. They can't get like some Spanish international to come and be their striker. Like he's not going to join. So what you have to ask is, relative to who's plausible you could get, did you do good signings? So I will say I'm actually going to low-key flame Fnatic here. They're ones I'll say I don't think you did a great job GMing. Here's why. If you only look at the names, mate, that's fine. Like, if I didn't know that was Fnatic, I mean, that's an interesting bunch of players, actually. If I even think about, like, first of all, 3 of the players I know can be very good LEC players. Razork, Vladdy, and Upset. Those can all be contended for best in their role. The others, like the Imperial Sky, that's actually someone people think had talent. That's an interesting pickup there. You know, you try, but here's the problem. The fact that they are 1, Fnatic, and they made this roster, but then 2, that this is what they ended up with at the end of the offseason, I think is a fail. And here's why, Zaboutine. Because 1, here's how badly Fnatic has managed their org. It was already known, hence all the memes, way before the end of Worlds, that Mikix is probably going to leave and make this SK team with leader, and he's going to go and make this weird one. Right? What the fuck is going on within the Fnatic team org culture that before a player leaves, it's already known, it's the worst kept secret that he's going to leave, he doesn't want to stay, and that he's going to go on this. But if you hear all of that, by the way, first of all, if I'm a big name prospect, I'm like, what's going on at Fnatic? Maybe I don't join Fnatic. Sounds like a fucking shit show over there, mate. Also, there was no other information. No one knew who else is staying and who's going. So I can tell you pros, Fnatic, it's not 10 years ago. People just don't automatically go, look, if G2 or Fnatic say yes, I agree. Nowadays, they're like, who else is on the team? Well, if you notice, they were one of the latest to get their squad together. So it also means you're missing a whole bunch of other people, by the way, who already are going to whatever other squad you might want them to be in. And then lastly, the idea that, right, if I have these two pieces, right, listen, if I'm making a trade, you know, when you go into the pawn shop, I need to trade this thing in for now. If the two things I'm trading, bro, is Razork, who is still only a year removed from like peak Razork, the one who's terrifying Europe. And the other one I have is Upset, who was the MVP this year. I know internally, because this is what everyone heard the leak was, the two of them can't or shouldn't play together. Right, bro. If I know that, I'm not going to wreck you if you try and deal these players to me. I'm never going to give you an awesome deal because you're desperate to get rid of them. It's like in the pawn shop. I know that you need the money for heroin or something, mate. I'm never going to give you the $200 for the TV then. I'm going to give you $25 right now. Take it or leave it. You know what I mean? Like, I have all the leverage because I know you need to get rid of them. Those are two pieces which in isolation, you should be able to deal to almost half the teams in the league. Like, those are really good pieces for most teams. So I think it's a massive fuck up that at the end of the offseason, it's clear that because of what I just said, they never dealt either of them. And they've ended up with two players. By the way, how awkward's that going to be when they walk in the room? They both know, like, well, there should only really be one of us here right now. You're still here. I'm still here. Oh, let's just Men in Black pretend this last year didn't happen. We're all great teammates now. This is going to be great. Because it's implied, by the way, their two playing styles, they themselves don't want them to fit together. If you're Razork, you don't want to 24/7 gank bot lane. Because you're Razork, bro. You want to be able to do whatever the fuck you want. You're one of the monsters in the jungle and just want to be told what to do. But if you're Upset, I want my jungler there every fucking time. I was the only reliable part. I tell you what, can I at least get my ganks off and then I can carry the game as a fucking ADC? Then I'll just throw this out there. If you're going to keep Upset and you wanted to get rid of Razork, this is why they fucked the offseason up. The first thing you would have done is go, Upset, listen, mate, stay put. We'll keep Mickey. We'll get rid of Razork. It's fine. We need to kick one of you anyway. You'd do that deal and you'd still have the best bot lane. No, you just let Mickey X go for no reason whatsoever. And by the way, I'll just tell you, as far as I know, he had zero problems with Upset. I think him and Upset actually really fucked with each other, mate, and got along, and they have a similar work ethic and grind. That, you never break that bot lane up, mate. The one good thing about Fnatic this year, the whole year, was the fucking bot lane, mate. I mean, they even basically admitted it in as much in the other teams. Like, most teams in the league would have told you, for all the problems of Fnatic, the bot lane looked like it worked really well. Like, I'd have made that my foundation for this season. So you fucked up the bot lane. It's broken in half now. Who knows how Upset will connect with this guy. Then you've kept the player that can't play with Upset or vice versa, whichever it is. Then into that mix, notice how this isn't the same, just look at the names. I'm trying to mix them all together. As I'm mixing this big gumbo, you've taken Vladdy, who, by the way, right now, his stock couldn't be worse. His reputation is destroyed in part due to what he did himself. And you're just going to throw that in the mix as I'm figuring all the rest of this. Holy fuck balls. Like, the one thing you've delivered if you're the Fnatic GM is you're never going to be short on fucking drama if you're a Fnatic executive, are you? Like, it's 24/7. Every movie you make's crazy drama. So, like, I don't hate the roster of players, but I tell you what, I'm very interested to see how it's going to work. Like, my boy Grabs, I thought he was going fucking working overtime on this year's roster. He's going to have to be a miracle worker to stitch this thing together. But even so, here's what's exciting. Here's the final thing that does give me hype, though. Bro, there are still some banging names on that roster. If you could somehow make it work, Worlds is still available. There is still a chance to be a team that could dark horse win the LEC. It's kind of cool. So in a way, he's delivered what I do expect for like Mad Drama, who the fuck knows, question mark. But I just feel like there were so many easier ways to just make what could have been what looked like a roster that would work immediately, you know?
There are a lot of things that are extremely interesting about Fnatic this year. Because first, I think that this offseason is a great showing that the attraction of Fnatic is probably at the lowest it's ever been for a League of Legends org. I think that back then, I remember back in Misfits, when Fnatic asked for Razork, he didn't even think for a second. It's like, I'm joining Fnatic. No, it's not that strong of a team anymore because you have Karmine, you have Koi, that are like orgs that are actually willing to commit on winning. So Fnatic is just now, I think, part of these followers to G2 and not like just the single strongest second. And I mean, they got dethroned by MKOI this year. The second thing is, I mean, there is a clear thing. It's been like, I don't know, 10 years, 5 years that I hear that Fnatic is completely bankrupt and have no money. But it keeps happening that they're spending fuck ton of money every single season. I think this year is one of the few showings that they didn't have money, because you only do an off season late when you want the leverage to go back in your favor, because yes, you cannot offer the best slots, but you're offering the last slots. Meaning when you go to a player and you're like, do you want to work in the LEC? Yeah, I can offer you that much, you know? It's like, probably not the salary you want, but you're going to play in the LEC. Everybody will say yes. Because once you see that, like, out of the 10 chairs, 8 have been taken, playing for Fnatic sounds really, really nice. And I think that shows that Fnatic doesn't have as much money. So for the first time, they are dealing with 2 constraints that they never used to have, which is lack of attractiveness as just your logo as an organization. And second is lack of money. I do believe that it's kind of an SK situation on a different level, or a vitality, which is this is the year where they cannot do what they usually do. So they have to change strategy. And for this reason, they did a better off-season for me than when they tried. It is kind of weird, right? Maybe it's a paradox, but I when I look at this roster, the only thing I don't like is Empiros is Greek, and I'm pretty sure Vladdy vouched for him. And I watched Empiros in the NFL.
Like an Apple hire or something, right?
Yeah, he has a little bit of talent, but he plays a little bit like a headless chicken still, like kind of runs on silent and dies quite a lot, saying doesn't feel like the flow of the game. Lospa was in GX Academy. I think he's a decent prospect. At least, I mean, you need to promote some people from the ERLs. You have to, so why not? I like the fact that all these guys shouldn't work together, and I think that there is nothing better for Fnatic than hiring a dysfunction, like making something against odds is really Fnatic. So I'm way more optimistic for them this year than last year. You remember my hot take at the beginning of the year would say they won't make Worlds. They changed Humanoid for Poby and they made it like short. But I really believe this team has way more upside, because the thing is, if Vladdy works, you have one of the single non-Korean mids that has a long-lasting career in Europe. If Razork works, you still have one of the best jungler. If Upset fails, which he eventually will, right? Upset does top 3, top 2, or top 10. That's how he is. I do believe, like, if it doesn't work, you have so much ground to work on. Like, you're not spending a lot of money. You're not short on options. You have a lot of talentful people that you can make work. I think Grabs has a lot of wiggle room as well with his players. The only thing is the Razork Upset situation. But at the end of the day, I do believe, like, players can hate playing with each other and still work. We saw that. I remember Elyoya and Niski still made it work. They don't have to be best friends. They don't have to agree on everything. I don't dislike the off-season of Fnatic for the reason that this is the first time they had to be any other team. They build any other roster, but they cannot have the flow that they usually have, which is having too much attractiveness and money, and make the mistake of over-hiring, if I may say. So I don't dislike it, but it's not good GMing. Like, I am on your side that they are not good GMs, but I'm rooting for Fnatic this year because it's a new Fnatic for me.
Sure. No, I mean, like I said, to me, it's just that if you have 2 pieces like that, you should be the ones control the off-season pretty much. Like, those should be top pieces for the other teams in the league. So
I don't think anyone wants that anymore.
Maybe not.
I don't think anyone wants Razork anymore. Like if you look at the junglers, like the jungle pool, you have Elyoya, you have Yike, you have Skumond, you have Yukino, who's not even, like, he's on KCB. We're gonna see in winter, but this guy, his stats in solo queue are like the same as Yike and Razork and stuff. These guys are an up and coming talent. You have Sheo, you have Linsas, who's really good. Rilesh is arriving and is really good jungler. I think that's Razork was fighting for the top spot against Yankos and Elyoya back then. No, there is like 5 Elyoyas in the league. So
you could argue that's also part of the fault of Fnatic, though. Like, bro, any time in the past 2 years, if you'd have taken this guy, he'd have been one of the most attractive players in the entire LEC. But the problem is you left him for so many years with the same flaws on Fnatic that now a lot of people are out on him, like you said, just because he had the bad season.
Yeah, that's true. No, I agree with you. I mean, I just, and Upset, it's a mystery for me. You know him better than I do, but I always wonder, like, why no one wants Upset. I wouldn't want Upset in my team because I don't like the play style of Upset teams. Sure. And the only way I will recruit Upset is saying, you do not have a say in the way we play the game. You do your job because you're excellent at your job, but the way you see yourself is the downfall of your own team. We do not want to play around you. I want you to be a Kobe and not an Hansama. And if you accept this deal, I will 100% work with Upset for a year. but I don't want to change the paradigm of my team for upsets, because every time you funnel resource to upset, your team does top 10. And every time you play away from set and you leave him 1v1 against the enemy ADC, and he can scale and play team fights, he's the best ADC in the league. And every team falls into the same trap of, we ignore, this is the cycle of upset. You recruit him because you recruit him and he's young in the team, he doesn't say a word. So you play away from him, he plays amazing. So you start realizing he's a really good player. So you start involving him in decisions. Then you funnel resources into him. So your team become predictable. You fail. And then you say upset is not a good player anymore. But that's your fault. Don't listen to him. Play away from him and let him carry team fights, and you have the best ADC in the league. But nobody dares to actually take upset in the room and say, bro, we are not playing around you. You can get leads, but we're going to get leads elsewhere, and you're going to win team fights. That's the only thing we ask from you. And for this reason, I feel like Fnatic just need to do that with upset, and then they have an excellent team.
But this way, it's a similar story with upsets. What I said about Trymbi, you just can't. I don't know if these people have to just be like fucking, this is a joke, tortured or some shit like that. But they just won't give up whatever it is they don't like me. Again, no one ever says he's like toxic, terrible teammate. Blah, blah. People don't even say what you're saying there, mate. That like he demands to be played towards. So I have to say, what I will say is this. Right, first of all, I know it'll sound weird, but I actually do think all those 10th places have given him, it's almost like I'm talking like fucking a French peasant from the medieval period. People are superstitious, bro. That makes people like, oh, fuck, if I'm around him, it'll spread to me or whatever. They think that, mate, in the same way as the joke with like someone like Humanoid would be. He always had flaws, but because he won those 2 splits and looked awesome, every fucker in the world wanted to play with him. And I'm like, oh, it's the truth. Oh my God, I've got to get to Humanoid. Like, that's the best player. People are just really fickle like that in esports. Then there's also, I'll tell you the weirdest thing, Zaboutine. Upset himself would agree with you on some level. Look, not entirely like that, obviously wants to be played towards. But put it this way, I think the whole reason he went through that Vitality project was because they had perks. And he thought like, fuck, finally, right? This guy's going to be the captain, the leader, the shot caller. I am just going to do my job. And then he's basically going to tell me when to rotate mid. And we're going to have the team fight. Perfect. Like, this is going to be awesome. But the problem is then they had the whole ball thing. And then he had that weird thing with his support. Wasn't that great? He had a whole, but there was bigger problems with that. And spoiler, perks himself turned out to be a problem in that team as well. So I think he is aware of this. But I'll give everyone a little bit of like off-season goss from last year. Last year, when Upset was looking for a new team, before he got on Fnatic, there was also a story that went, he might have been the person who ended up in Patrick's spot and joined Rogue, right? But I even did say on that one, look, as someone who remembers when fucking Froggen and Reckless combined, I don't think you and Larson should ever play together, bro. Like, again, you can both be really good players, but that feels like that's making a fucking Immortals mistake, mate. Well, on paper, they look good, but put them together, it's like they're going to come. You're going to be dead. No one's ever going to fucking go to a team fight. You know what I mean?
Disaster.
Everyone's be sat in lane all day long. So I was like, we can't. That you probably shouldn't do that, no matter what. Even if you both like each other or whatever, don't take a different deal. So I think Upset on some levels, and also I'll even say, here's how I'll acknowledge what you say. I think it's actually slightly the other way around, and this is the most unfair thing if you're Upset. I think if you actually told him that his coach doesn't want to play to him all the time, he's going to play to on certain champions, but aside from that, like you say, we're going to have like a strong top side, and we're going to play the game, we're going to have our jungle, like look, we had a carry jungler in fucking Razork, who can just do whatever he wants. We're going to play like that for most of the game. Then when you get activated, we're going to, you're going to have the team fights, you're going to be able to, I think what happens is people start out that way, then when other things in the team break, the problem is the most reliable thing is just play to Upset, because as you say, he's a very stable player, by the way. And if you tell him we're going to give you the resources in this game, he's not going to say no. He's going to go, okay, load it up. I'm basically in solo queue, load me up and I'll do what I can. So I think the problem he has is he's been the insurance policy at the end for too many teams. By the way, Yamato got to a fucking Worlds doing this, just riding this guy doing that a couple of times. So it can work. The problem is, I agree, it's not the best squad. The best squad in an ideal world would have been, this is why he tried to do this many years ago, if he ever could himself have gotten to a G2 and he'd have had, you know, a Wonder and a Caps or something. I'll tell you what, this guy, mate, would have been like Flackhead God mode, mate. He would have just done whatever you'd said in that team, and he would have just sat back and let you win the championships, and he'd just play his role. And then when he got the odd game on Caitlyn or something, then he'd carry the game, you know. I think he would be willing to do that. So the way, that's also part of the mystery of Upset Zaboutine is, it isn't that he's some forgiven character that demands all of this in the same way. I think he's totally open to the idea his way hasn't worked, he hasn't won. But at the end of the day, if everything else fails in the game, he absolutely will go, right, okay, I'm the last person, give me the ball, then I'll do something with it, mate.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the thing is, I think it's it's the coach who should watch for these things.
Absolutely.
I think that that's why players are all delusional to some extent, and it's good for them because they won't be good. But that's why you need a second look on the team, and that's the responsibility of the coach. And I put a lot of the failures of Upset upon their coaches, which I do believe that if Upset is the best player in your team, while not really willing to funnel all the resources, and you start asking Bo to be diving bot every single wave instead of being top diving ganking on Photon the way he was doing when the bot laner was Neon. If you like, I can take many examples of that, even when he was playing in Origin or things like this. It's like that the role is to like put some responsibility on the teammates. I was like, the gold standard of playing League of Legends in your team is Upset, but you're asking an ADC to win the game in the first 15 minutes of the game. You guys are just out of your ass. You need to step up. You need to create pressure on the map because now we're predictable. Everybody knows, like, if you look at Fnatic during the summer split, it was pitiful to watch Razork straight ignore Poby, who was playing Annie and Galio, which are champions that need the jungler, because he was desperate to gain bot to try to get some type of lead, because everybody was so convinced that any move against around Oscarinin would lead the team to failure.
Yes.
It is the coach to say, no, we're going to put Oscarinin ahead. We're going to play topside. It doesn't work. But we cannot keep doing that because we're predictable. And that is for me a huge failure. So obviously, dealing with the players they had in Fnatic, with the atmosphere they had in Fnatic, I can't put everything on Grabs, but there is a certain part of responsibility that falls onto Grabs, the same way he did in BDS. I think that Grabs, the problem is his upbringing as a coach is so successful that he didn't have some of the tough learning lessons that we coaches of that team had, because we had to deal with worse players, losing lanes, tilting in the locker room and things like this. He had to deal with superstars. So there is problems with superstars, but I think that on the flip side, when things get dysfunctional, sometimes I feel like they just lack of experience around some areas of the coaching in League of Legends. But maybe I'm wrong. I would have to discuss that with him. You know him better than I do, but I sense that when you put him in dysfunctional teams, he doesn't have the solution because he's never been through really dysfunctional team that he had to fix. Whereas, like, I don't know, the coach of MCOY or Striker, they went through highs and lows. And so if you give them a losing team, they're going to be like, okay, guys, we're just going to do like 5% better every day. And they're probably going to improve them from like 15 or 20%. They're not going to change the whole world, but they're going to be able to do something with the cards they dealt. Whereas I think Grabs, if you give him the best team in Europe, is going to be able to make sure they don't tilt until the late part of the year where everything matters. Like he did that so well. But ask him to manage a middle of the pack team with problems and egos. He didn't have to do that half or 60% of his career. So he's obviously a little bit lackluster in that field because experience is all that matters in coaching.
I mean, if people don't remember, he was the one who was in that BDS that was very unsuccessful and had all sorts of massive flaws. I know what you mean, put it this way. If I was to use a football analogy, I would say Grabs is in the position of like Carlos Ancelotti.
I would say exactly the same.
Yeah, but you're like this one, because what people will forget, mate, there's a stop on Ancelotti's route that no one remembers, bro, which is, do you know, briefly, before he went back to Real Madrid, he managed Everton. Now, Everton, once upon a time, like 40 years ago, was a big club. In the modern day, they're one of those ones, a bit like Leeds, that are relevant now. They just live off, decades ago name. So because they want to be relevant again, they got Ancelotti, right? The problem was, this is the worst coach you could ever sign. It doesn't make sense. And here's why. Because his whole thing was having the greatest players ever, but then he's like a mentality monster. He knows just how to make that striker comfortable. And he knows just how to give just enough agency to this player that they can play their way, but he keeps just enough structure that it works, The problem with that is that's a very different skill set, which, by the way, very few people ever have had. Like, this guy could be the GOAT coach. Look at his fucking resume with winners. It's unreal. The problem is he'd never do what they did, which is take that guy and go, now just take like a whatever team with a bunch of whatever players. You can sign a couple, go on, do your magic. And it's like, well, my magic's not going to work. Like, you haven't got like fucking Maldini there, or like Shevchenko, or fucking Cristiano Ronaldo, or Gareth Bale, the best players in the absolute world. Look, the secret with those guys is they're so hard to deal with, but in a different way. That's not traditional coaching, is it? So I feel like that's even a great example. Because that same thing, I will never let anyone tell me Grabs was shit in G2, mate. actually, it was a masterclass how
great.
we handled those egos. There's a reason why that's the only like insane super team that worked even better than you expected. Like normally, mate, those players, like I've always said in that team, I'll give you an example. If you're in that team, mate, the number one person who could have had like a boycott ages ago was fucking Wonder. Be like, bro, half the time I don't even get to play carry. Like I'm peak Wonder. Like if you put me on any other team, every pick would be a carry pick, mate. I'd be smashing the game. But on this team, if I know when you have to play to the bot side or we have to play the caps, then I'll be the fucking, I will just play whatever, like fucking Scion or some bullshit like that. That's a masterclass of, you know, man management and getting people on side and making people, and even some of the shit he did do where when he would take the blame in that team, that was clever. That took pressure off those players, even though it almost certainly was that this diva player asked for that mid lane pick. And then Jankos told them not to do this pick, but they did, you know, instead, the way you asked it, but the problem is that skill set didn't apply to BDS. That doesn't apply to Humanoid. You know what I mean? Like, you've mismatched the manager with the players. I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's funny, the uncertainty, when they asked him to do his best 11, and as a midfielder, he had to choose between, you know, Modric, Kaká, and Zidane. And it's like, yeah, obviously.
Pretty good. Pretty fucking good 11. Yeah, I know.
It's pretty decent. Decent midfielders.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I to just summarize on Fnatic, I feel like because they didn't do what they usually do, it's better because they usually do shit with the cards. With the amount of reputation and money they usually have, they really underperform. No, they can only overperform, and so I'm more hyped for Fnatic this year than the last 5. You want to talk about Karmine? Because we haven't mentioned Karmine.
We can, but first of all, since I know people, whenever we talk about Karmine Corp, they're going to be listening very intently. I would suggest they do it wearing a wonderful pair of Raycon AirPods. That would be the best way to listen to this episode. Yeah, really these are the everyday classic ones, but they've also just brought out their open ear ones. So this message obviously is sponsored by Raycon. So one of the cool things is they've got these new ones now with an open ear design where basically they just sit just outside your ear canal. So the best thing is, obviously the main problem, anyone who ever walked through a town with earbuds in knows this, is that thing where you walk in, listen, it's going to be a lovely, lovely day, lovely day. You're just walking down the street, you know, going to the shop. Then next thing you know, bike, you'll be like, whoa, what the fuck? I didn't hear that. Like, the problem is it blocks your ears, doesn't it? Normally, earbuds, like, that's the thing. You're not going to be, well, the open ear ones, you can still hear everything, but you also hear the music as well. So that's actually a great fucking feature. Then they've got on top of them as well this thing, this multi-angular hook, which basically means that, like, depending on how your ear is, you'll get a good fit for them inside. Because actually, a lot of those original AirPod type ones, they either fit your ear or you don't. It's why a lot of them come with the little extra sizes, etc., to try and get the right. So this one has the design's really cleverly done, so it will fit on some different level, but it can be sort of personalized as you do it. Also, these ones are really lightweight, so you don't have that feeling of like your ear gets fatigued from having them in, because people have them in a lot now. Obviously, they're traveling, going around with them in airports, libraries, wherever, and they have multi-point connections, so you can connect to multiple devices and really easily, seamlessly just switch between them. So I think actually these are the best Raycons so far they've done, and you can get the essential open earbuds for the holiday season. Selling out fast, guys, so go now. Raycon audio products up to 20% off this holiday season. Go to buyraycon.com/LFN open, all one word, to save on Raycon audio products site-wide. Order by December 15th, and they will guarantee delivery by Christmas, because great gifts shouldn't show plate. Unlike upset to a team fight. Whatever. That gag's just there. He was just hanging right there. So anyway, thanks to Raycon. Thanks to everyone listening. Now, let's make everyone really upset by having Zaboutine speaking English about Karmine Corp. How dare he do that? So, okay. Here's the obvious question to start with, Zaboutine. I want you to do what I did with Fnatic. I did my part. You did yours. Right? You have to evaluate how Karmine Corp handled the off-season, but relative to it being Karmine Corp, the pieces they had at the beginning, what they've ended up, how do you think they've done? What grade would you give the GM?
I think they did bad. I think the off-season is bad.
Let's go.
And I've said
Let's
it.
go.
I've already made a French video about it. So
okay.
I don't really like what they've done, because I think that, you know, the Churchill quotations, like they had to choose between dishonor and war. They chose dishonor and they're going to get war. Right. This is the Caliste situation is an Mbappe situation, you know? It's, you hired all these superstars to show Caliste that you care to keep him not to go to G2 at the end of the year. But where is the announcement of Caliste resigning? That's my problem. That's it. I've done the off-season of Karmine.
Right.
So you spend a lot of money on Kana because Kana isn't cheap, right? Like everybody knows Kana isn't cheap. You keep Yike, which fine.
And you signed him really early. You signed him before Worlds had even finished. So that
Yeah.
implies to me you give him a really good deal, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, they have to, right? Like you wouldn't sign Kana, especially like because the thing is, before Worlds, there was still this question about the top laner of KT. They were like, Kana could have had a spot in LCK, maybe LPL, maybe LTA as well, TNR, like LCS.
Yeah.
So signing him early, and you're like, okay, we're gonna get you, and we're gonna get a strong Korean to go with you because we do understand you're probably a little lonely by yourself in Karmine. So we're gonna kick Vladdy because Vladdy and Cadiz don't feel like working together. The problem is, if you're bent to the desire of your star player, please extend him.
Yes.
That is such a, like right now, imagine this roster, because I don't think the spread of players they have is bad whatsoever, right? If it doesn't work and they don't go to Worlds, when I'm saying doesn't work, is they miss Worlds, or even if they lose in play-in. Let's give them, they qualify to play in at Worlds, or they just lose in Swiss stage very early and they don't really have a good showing. Then at the end of the year, Hansama is old and G2 comes. You haven't re-signed Cadiz. Cadiz leaves. Now your team is Kana, signed for, I think, 2 years. Yike. Yao, we don't know how it's going to be. The problem is, if it works, you never know how long a Korean's going to overperform. Not everyone is Impact or Core JJ. And then you have Buzio, which I think it's it's like I spoke about BDS trusting Bukada. This is the complete opposite. It's like, oh, Targamas, you did the best year of your season. Fuck you. You leave. We're taking Buzio. It's probably a 15% upgrade. We're taking the 15% upgrade. We need to be the best everywhere. We don't care about continuity. We don't care about team atmosphere. We just care about being the best possible. And on top of that, we have to change the coach and we have 2 Korean players. This is I come from LCS. The really clever, not so clever idea that every single GM had is like, oh, we have 2 Korean players. Let's get Reapered. Let's get a Korean coach. He's going to tell them. Reapered, I will never say a bad thing about him as a coach because I've dealt with a lot of players that work with him. But he isn't perfect. No one's perfect. And what tells you he's the man? Have you worked with him? He's not even in the same environment. Culturally, there is a world of difference between EU League of Legends and NA League of Legends. The way the review is done, the schedule. So it's really like, I feel like with the average quality of coaches we now have within this industry, I'm kind of surprised that Karmine went all the way to get Reapered, which probably is like, I would say the top 5% most expensive coaches in the industry. Because Reapered, you're not gonna get Reapered involved by paying him cheap, because I don't think he need that money. He was probably the best paid coach during the golden age of the LCS, and I was there, and I know what the salaries were for these people. So if he invested even 20% of the money he got during this year into sub investment, he should be fine. So there is a lot of like, it looks very clever for the plebs, but if you start digging down, the non-signature of Calist, the non-trust to Targamas, the fact that they were cut short by Shopify Rebellion on Zini and they had to go to Yahoo instead because they couldn't get the best Korean, but they still wanted a Korean because they can't make Vladdy work, who is potentially the best European prospect, and it's a failure on the end to not be able to maintain him. Keeping Yaikwa, having Yukino, and not doing the gamble of trying to upgrade this, and getting Kana for that much money, I can't say it's a great off-season. I think they might even be the best team in EU, but if they are not, it's an astronomical failure because this is so much money involved, and I think in comparison to last year, this is probably like, as I say, the 10 to 15% upgrade in terms of raw power from the players, and you're not even sure Reapered is going to do like that amazing of a job. So I don't know how Reapered walks in Karmine and start like telling Calist, no, you shut up, you're going to listen to me. Right? Like how that like locker room politics going to happen with Buzio coming, with Calist? There is so much intangible in this team. And I do believe that it doesn't feel like a team that has 3 levels of teams across the ARLs being able to pick pretty much any player they want. It feels like a team that's desperate to exist. And and they are even ready to sell themselves short for short-term winning. And I think when you do that, as I said with the Churchill quotation, you set up yourself for war. And I am very afraid of the future for Karmine Corp.
No, by the way, I get it, because I will say on this show this year, me and Yamato kept planting the seed of, like, essentially, unless things go the right way with Kalist, it's actually inevitable a player like that goes to G2 and just wants to win immediately, because that option is always there, and it's already implied they're interested in a player like him. As you say, Hansama can't stay forever, mate, and he's a known quantity. You've probably seen the best of Hansama. Kalist could still get like 1.25 times better. Who knows? Like, he's already pretty cracked as a rookie. But I know what you mean. Like, in that scenario, one, even though the KC fans will delude themselves, like, no, but you don't understand. He's KC through and through. He came up in KC. He's French like yours, mate. That won't matter if it's G2. It just won't. Like, you'll even tank the hate and all the people hating on you, because who gives a fuck? The second you win that LEC trophy, it's all gone. No one will give a shit. At that point, by the way, the second he wins the LEC trophy in G2, every KC fan no longer hates Kalist. They hate KC the org. They're like, why did we let him go? Look, he really was that good. So, and also, I know what you mean. If you did these moves, these all clearly were like, please, Kalist, this is the squad for you, mate. Like, look at this. It's all I know what you mean. The last thing you have to announce at the end of that roster of the off season is, we've signed all these players and Kalist's just extended for 2 years. If that is the last piece of news, you killed it. Then it was a great off season.
I would have said great off season. But like here, you spend all the money. It's when your girl leaves and you're spending all that money to get her back. It's just wasting money. She doesn't want you anymore. Like, if he didn't, like, my point is, if he didn't resign, he doesn't want to resign. He would have resigned already. Like, watch which player wants to wait for the half of the season to go into a small room with Kamel and the sport directors of Karmine and say, I want that much for next year. He knows how much he wants for the next years.
Yes.
Obviously, he knows the price is there. It's on the table. So either they can't pay, which I think they will literally do anything they can, or he doesn't want to stay. And if he doesn't want to stay, the last thing you want to do is you sell yourself short on Kana, Reaper, then Busio. Because not that these players are bad by any means. They're probably among the best players of their position, but they're all on a part of their career where they're going to start being worse with very high chances. And they are not going to improve that much. And for some of them, they're going to be willing to go home. And that's not something you can control. Like, when a player, I had Koreans, I worked with Crown, and Crown was like, I want to go home. He started with, I want a Korean coach. I was like, no, there is no Korean coach happening. I'm not working Korean coach. He's like, okay, I want to leave. I'm like, okay, we'll transfer you to any team that has a Korean coach. No problem, Crown. Good luck, my friend. He went to CLG because they had Song. Lasted 3 weeks. And then he left. So when someone wants to go home, he wants to go home, and there is nothing you can do. So when Kenna's going to be homesick, when Yahoo is going to feel like he's a little bit, if he's great, he's going to be willing to go to Korea or set himself into any other region where they can pay him more. Kali's going to leave, and then you think like Busio is going to be, bring me any ADC. Busio is going to go with Kalist. If they're the best bot lane, Kalist and Busio are going to G2. Because G2 already has the 2 generational talents that they need. They have Skumon, which is the new Inspired. That's why they didn't go for Inspired, because they know they have probably the single best upgrade at the jungle position already. They have Caps, which is the intergenerational talent. BB, they can replace him by Naknako whatsoever and find a guy. So if they get Kalist and Busio, Karmine will have lost everything. They would have trained this bot lane for G2, and then it's just going to be an absolute failure. So I am extremely skeptical and disappointed by Karmine, who's we say putting the horse behind the car. It's like right?
In putting the cart in front of the horse is what we're saying. It's just the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I feel that they've done the off season. It's like, sign Kalist, and all of this makes sense. Don't sign Kalist, and you just show yourself. You're showing everyone that you don't know what you're doing and you're new in the business.
No, the other reason it's crazy is because what shows you that Kalist had all the leverage, Zaboutine, is they've done all these moves for him, but he can just wait it out, mate, and just go, I'll see how this year works. At the end of the year, I didn't like it, actually. See, I'm off. And then you have no choice. It's just it. He's out.
You don't even sell him. No buyout. Zero. He just leaves. It's the Mbappe situation. They wanted to keep him one more year, and they didn't sell him, and then he just went to Madrid. That's exactly the same situation. And I don't know what they can do, because the only thing that would make Kalist convinced he can win Worlds with this roster, they would have to win first turn or like go in finals in MSI. With the talent they have in LCK, probably not happening this year. Like this team is good. Tell me it's good enough to like beat Genji or T1? Probably not. So yeah, he's just gonna wait it out. And then they're gonna come to him like in June and say, "Oh, Kelly's, by the way, it would be really good if he's like, yeah, we'll discuss that in September." And September is like, welcome Callis, welcome Buzio, G2 Army, and the whole project will. And then what's Karmine gonna look like? A team that won't have money because they already spent all the money they need for next year when Callis will leave. This year for Callis, who's gonna leave. So I really don't like it.
I also think some of the gambles they've taken are big. Like that mid lane gamble's an enormous one. People are just doing that thing now where everyone's so convinced with all these analyzers and scouts. Everyone thinks they can just find basically like what they got in LTA, people like Quid and Quad, etc., and that these are all just going to somehow work and that they're going to be amazing in the West. Like some of them don't make it, mate. Sometimes they just fall flat completely. You never know.
Look at Loki.
Yeah, absolutely.
Loki didn't work. Thanatos didn't make it to Worlds. They had good players with them, so it doesn't matter. Like you still need to get the best out of your players. They just raw talent that are good in solo queue. There is so much work between just pulling a guy from the Korean Challenger Series and making him a top player. As I said, not everyone is impact at CoreJJ.
I do agree though with replacing the coach, and the reason why is this. I actually think if you were to look at this year and you looked at Karmine Corp and where they started and where they finished, and look at where G2 began and where they finished, that has to be coaching. Like G2's coaching stuff looked like they mastered it. They literally peaked and got better each split, and the pieces gradually got better and better and fit together until by the end, everything looked really awesome. KC went the opposite way. They began as good as you possibly could be. They literally got a little bit worse. It felt like every part of the split that went on. And eventually, they only had their strengths holding up the team fighting. And then by the end, when people could beat that, they had nothing, and they couldn't make the final. They couldn't go to Worlds, and they were literally completely irrelevant by the end of the year. Like that can't be it. It's not 100% on the coach, but if you are the coach, you either didn't do your job or you were influential in that downfall, I'm afraid. Like, and then you add in the drama of the whole thing with Vladdy that was so badly managed, that was so mismanaged. I even think the whole thing of like if you brought Niski in to get him on side, it didn't work. It failed completely. And then in the end, you were just wasting a scrim block on a guy you were never going to put in the actual games just to make the guy not playing the scrim go, I guess they're punishing me, but I still play the game. Like, I never understood what the fuck they were doing with that Niski Vladdy thing, man. I feel like that was like a desperation move that didn't work.
It was worse than you think, because you don't have access to the French journalism.
Tell me in a second, and here's what I think is going to be even worse as Zaboutine. Even though it is implied to me, Vladdy might himself be a bit spicy and it might be hard to deal with. I've seen too many esports and sports, bro. I predict when he goes to Fnatic, he'll just look really good again, mate. And one of the better players in there. And you'll just be, if the Kiao guy doesn't work, as a KC fan, you'll be like, why the fuck don't we have him? Why is he now on their team? Like, we used to beat their team. Well, what was this? What was the sense inside the French scene? Go and tell me.
So, when they announced that they recruited Niski, it was just to be a member, kind of a coach around the team. Until Callis did an interview with a French newspaper when he announced that it was a 6-man roster. So the person who announced to the French audience that Niski would be able to play and Vladdy was actually in competition with Niski was Callis, because the management ensured 2 days prior to this interview that Niski would never play, and he was just a consultant to increase performance. And we were like, what is this? Like, Callis is not. And then they kind of backtracked and say, yes, sometimes. And then we heard from other teams that he was actually playing some blocks in screens, but he didn't get results because, Niski just switched.
He said he was losing all the time anyway, yeah.
Yeah, because I believe that, like, this team was much better with Vladdy, and they should, a good coaching staff would have actually made Vladdy and Callis work. And I think that the only way is for instance, as I said, like, there is the French interview of BDS where, like, the CEO said Nuke and Striker didn't want to work together. And then they just sat down and said, guys, we need to make it work because you guys are strong. You are strong asset for the team, and we cannot start bleeding talents because people argue, about things. And when Vladdy was the savior of the team at the beginning of the year, because they had to upgrade because Saken was bad last year, everybody was praising him. He was playing out of his mind. And then they started, being compliant. And instead of dealing with the thing, I think they just let it bleed and say, oh, we'll see eventually. And now they have to pay the tribute for that. And it doesn't feel like it is I'm sorry, because I really wish it was, but it doesn't feel like KC is ready for its ambition. It's not G2. They can say they want to compete with G2, but I feel like they are a little bit late to the party, because when I look at G2, when I look at MCOY is just so much more stable. Through ups and downs, like keeping Mirvin, keeping Supa and Alvaro, trusting your players, trying to solve situations, there is so much more better signals from teams. Karmine really looks like when EG came into the league in LCS, they had good showings, and then the thing blew apart because they couldn't handle all the bumps, in the road. I am worried, not on the long term, because I think that they want to win so much and they have so many fans, they're gonna like make it out. But on the next 2 years, I don't see Karmine being a top team if they don't make it this year. It's gonna be a disaster.
But I swear, I do think, and I even said this at the time, even though it makes fans go crazy, listen to the context of what I'm saying. In a weird way, Zaboutine, I actually think winning that particular split might have been the worst thing that could happen to that roster, because it did make the expectation of a KC fan of like, we should actually now win every time and go to all the international tournaments. And then they even remember, because of that bizarre set, they even fucked around and made the final of the first stand. Like, that put the expectations... Like, those would be almost impossible expectations for G2, mate. And they're already, like, the best-built squad with the really great GM, coaching staff, teams, established players. KC has none of these things. Like, you'll notice the two teams you just picked out there, MCOY and G2, both have their coach for the next few years, bro. They've got a coach with a system that they're building based on the system, recruiting based on the system. They are bought in completely to his vision, and that gives them a stability throughout the years at this point. They just had to change their coach in KC, so they don't have the coach and the valid thing that way. As we said, it looks like all these off-season moves were just the please stay Calist train of people, and there's another gift Calist and another thing, and at the end he never signed anyway. So that's already like you get half marks for like getting good players, but you probably fucked up your long-term vision there. And then lastly, I would just put this detail out there, which is if you look in their squad, because of the first split, people ignore that like the last split was dog shit. The summer split, they were rough the whole time. They used to have games in summer where they should have lost to the, GXs and Heretics. It's just they had better players. And it's almost like they were almost trying to lose, if you know what I mean. Like they were just playing that badly that any team capable, if you would have given one better player to each of those squads, they'd have won. It'd have been 2-1 to the other team. And they'd have been like barely getting to the playoffs. And even in the playoffs, like, mate, here's how you know the year went dog shit and was poorly managed if you're the people from Karmine Corp. Canna, as far as I'm concerned, was the player of the LEC this year. He was the best player the whole year until magically Oscarinin, who's had all sorts of nightmare problems and isn't even on Fnatic, just completely gapped him, and that was the end of the year. Like, what a dog shit way for your year to end. The most embarrassing way ever. And it's not even like everyone could have accepted if a KOI had beaten them or a G2. Fnatic's the one team you couldn't afford to lose to. No one even believed in that. I don't even believe Fnatic believed in themselves. As I saw in that next series where they just like rolled over and fucking let MCOY just have their way with them. Like you couldn't have, like, in the same way as for the coach and I think everyone within the org, you learned the hard way that like it worked briefly or you got lucky, but then when you had to prove it and consistently, it hasn't come yet. And by the way, it shouldn't. Like, you haven't even been in the league. Like, you've only now been in for 2 years. And there are so many ups and downs and lessons. And as we're pointing out here with the off-season, the off-seasons are their own game. They're not just signed players. It's like a fucking trading card game against the opponent. What hold does he hold? What cards do you hold? When do you play them? Do you play them early and get the piece, but then you could have had a better pick? The gambles are half of what the off-season is about, and their gambles are kind of a bit scuffed right now, whereas I have to say, they do it so many times. G2 just knows when to hold with their cards, you know what I mean? This is the one where they just kept all the players. It's the right time. They know their windows next year, like you're saying. They either have a better squad anyway, which because they don't need to change players, or the joke is, this is why you fucked up if you KC. As you say Calist is excellent again. In fact, let's go one further. He's not only excellent, let's say he's the MVP of the league, and the Bussio bot lane works. Cool, we'll have them. Thanks for developing them. Thanks for testing that out in your team, that it works. I'll just take it, like G2's been able the last few years. I'll just take it when I know it's guaranteed to work. Thank you, I'll have that. Like, fucking hell, like, and that's what, if I was KC, you have so many lessons to learn from G2. Like, people should study their off seasons, mate. Because it's not as simple as just everyone wants to join. They also are very clever with like when they do their gambles and when they don't, and who they stick with and who they take the big gamble on.
And there is one more thing, is the fact that they're not using their own talent from the academy. Mainter should have been the replacement to Canna. He's not better than Canna.
No.
Canna dropped the ball at the most important moment of the year, while being probably one of the most expensive players of the league. and has really shown signals of being homesick. You have Mainter that has an upcoming talent, and you had The Rock that went to replace Freddy 122 at Navi. I just don't like the fact that you have Mainter and The Rock, and you end up with Kana and Reaper. Right? It's like, I think that my discussion would have been, Callis, do you resign? No? Okay, you get Mainter and The Rock immediately. I would not have thought about it, because if you want to develop long term, you have to use your academy. The only reason you wouldn't do that is because you want to skip steps to win faster. So the fact that they're not only not resigning Calist and paying a lot of money for the talents, they're blocking the promotion of their own talents, meaning they are not playing by the cards, by the structure they have established, which I think gives them the biggest lead to any other org. Is there is a talent in ERL 2, Karmine Corp Blue Star. There is a talent in ERL, Karmine Corp Blue, and then they can promote the best of the best after trying them on 2 levels. That is phenomenal. This should just single-handedly put them ahead of G2 in the next years. But the fact that no, there is traffic jam to get into the main team because we prefer to actually hire the best players because we want to satisfy our fans instead of saying, no, we're going to promote from the academy. Like, if Barcelona stopped promoting kids from the Masia and start hiring talent, they would become Real Madrid. The only reason they can compete with Madrid is because they don't pay the best talent every time, but they're able to promote, keep, and pay more and more after the years if their talents actually emerge, which I don't really see there. And that worries me because it means that as like, it's kind of like Vitality, they're not thinking the big picture and they're not accepting to have, like, if Callis doesn't resign, going with Mainter and The Rock would have been so cheap, so organic, and everybody would have rooted for the kids that got promoted. It would have been a story to tell. And you're like, yes, we saved so much money. Next year, it's going to be the big off season because plenty of names are going to be available on the market. We're going to hit strong next year. Like we promised, we're going to even go look for investors if we need to. But if Callis doesn't want to stay, we are not going to sell ourselves short. That would have been such a great statement for the org. Here, everything goes in too many directions for me.
So I know what you mean, because I actually did think the same thing. To me, actually how they got Calist into their team was in part because they like gilded his way through their org into their main team. Like, if that had just been a normal off season, maybe he would have been on G2 or somewhere already. It could have happened. But I feel like he was always going to give it a try because they'd made that established. So you want it to be that, first of all, it makes your ERL team more attractive, because then you know I have a real chance to go up to the main squad. Whereas there are other teams where when you know the path isn't there, it's not as attractive. And then also, I know what you mean. The Barcelona one's a good example, because actually this literally did happen with Barcelona like 2 or 3 years ago. They tried the Real Madrid approach, we just signed all the good players now. And it's like, wait a minute, what are we doing? Our whole thing at Barcelona is we have the best like fucking academy squad that brings forward real players. You start bedding them into the lineup and they become the next stars of the league. Like, at that point it works. So I know what you mean. If you KC, you threw away one of your biggest advantages. You actually had, in theory, the best talent pipeline of anyone. Because as you saw, even when they promoted the original KC, the talent pipeline to KC Blue was always still mega. Like, that's why the joke is they've ended up in the LEC thing now, even though I'm pretty sure Riot never stopped and thought, well, fuck, what if KC Blue make it? Because then we have KC versus KC. But that's how good the job they did. The KC Blue actually was better than Los Ratones at the end. That's how the year ended. So, no, I know what you mean. Like, it's actually a mistake in that sense, because that's another thing Peter Dunn told me that I do agree with. If you really have a team that might even be a top ERL team, but the players know it doesn't matter how well I play, they will never put me over the name in the LEC team. That totally changes things like their own loyalty to your club, how they think about their careers. They also might make a short-term move just to get out the squad immediately. Maybe they want to go to LEC next split. But it means even if they play 10 out of 10 in the ERL, we are never going to put them over Canna. Canna was in fucking World semi-finals, and we've all just said he's the best player in the LEC. So that means it doesn't matter how well I play in KC Blue. I can't get in the squad. It doesn't matter. So I know what you mean. You have sort of cut off your own advantage there, just to try and, the analogy here is you think you're fucking G2. You aren't G2 yet. There's only one G2, boys. There's only one. And you've got to earn the fucking status before you can play the games they play and fuck around like this in the off-season. But the real sad thing is, I actually do, I know what you mean. If I was them, I'd almost never be signing all outside players, mate. Almost every year, if there's a space, there probably should be one promoted player, because logically, if we're doing a good job on the ERL, he's good. He's actually someone who could play in the LEC. It's a quality player. And you don't need 5 superstars anyway.
Nobody knows. Everybody knows that. Like, as the thing is, you had even the Buzio thing, like, I don't know. It's like I've seen Buzio play, but the talent pool in support, like I still see like bot lanes with FBI in 2025. Like no offense, FBI is a really good player. He has a really good legacy in the LCS, but like the average level in Europe in terms of bot lane is far greater, especially on the support position. We had a very good deal of
stacked
support.
role. I think we've got the best support is stacked in LEC.
Yeah, I think jungle and support are pretty good in LEC. And when I look at like the direct matchup, Buzio, yeah, he had insane games this year. But you have to look at the opponents and you have to look at the rhythm of the game. I don't think that it is even a stratospheric upgrade. And yeah, it's just overall, I really like these moves that are like long-termists. And I do understand that the fans might be disappointed because you make a choice that might not take you to the title this year. But you cannot win every year. That doesn't work. Either you're playing in a team where like Madrid can win pretty much every year because they're in Spain, right? But like you don't win the Premier League every year. Nobody does. And LEC has very more of a structure of a Premier League than it does the structure of the Ligue 1 or the La Liga. It's just you have so many teams that are trying to win, and the talent is so concentrated. Even though we don't have the best talent in the world, like the disparity in talent is pretty low. So you're not gonna be able to ensure, no matter what you do, that you're gonna win at the end of the year. The only thing you can do is to ensure that every year you don't overspend for what you get. And then I think one of the biggest jobs for organizations is to create a trust bond with their fans, saying we're not going to win all the time, but we're aiming for the big wins sometimes. If you don't convey this message to your audience, you eventually finish being a bad organization. I think Liquid sold themselves that way. I think Vitality sold themselves this way. You cannot aim for the title every year. Rebuild years are extremely important in sports.
No, I'm with you. I actually agree. I also think as well, one last thing to say is people are just acting like Bussy also will just instantly plug in and they'll be amazing. Right, yeah. Bro, he's played with one ADC and been really good. Then people even say in FlyQuest, then he had Mithy, the support was. He doesn't have that anymore, by the way. That's all gone now. Then I'll just throw this in there. I know Jojo made it, so now we're going to pretend every import's going to be awesome from America. Mate, it is very different to live in LA with the fucking sunshine and the beach right there and all that fucking social life, and then go to rainy Berlin and sit in a fucking German house and just play solo queue where your internet drops every fucking 10 minutes or something. You know what I mean? Like, bro, it's a very different world. And the grind, I think, is way crazier in Europe in that sense. Remember, players also, they're allowed. In America, they really do that gentle parenting thing. In Europe, motherfuckers will tell you in a scrim, you fucking shit. Like I watched that FlyQuest video everyone was losing their mind about, and I was like, that'd be like the fucking chillest room Inspired's ever been in his life, mate. That wasn't even vaguely a massive argument to me. That was people just being mildly rude to each other as they explained real points in a review. So if people think that's crazy, Americans, like, I know people did that joke on Sheep Esports. They kept putting the Polish flag for Busio. It's like, he's bloody American, mate. I know what you mean by that. And you're trying to make it seem less weird that he's going to Europe. But like, to me, he's very much an American walking in that room there. And he is going to have that. Maybe he'll fuck with it. Maybe he'll be the rare American who does, but that culture clash can be brutal, mate.
I mean, a lot of culture clash. 3 Koreans, 1 French, 1 American. Good luck.
I also think, by the way, I'll tell you another thing as well they're missing there is, obviously the French players speak English, but holy fuck, you're going to have like semi-broken English Koreans speaking to that. Like, so I had this problem. You speak in English, but the accent is crazy, bro, if you're not tuned in. Like, you've got to get that ear tuned in. And also, everyone, basically, Tony Busio speaking his home language. Everyone's speaking in the middle in English. It's going to be weird. It's going to be weird, mate.
We'll see. We'll see. I wish them to be good, at least, because they spend too much money to be bad. But I don't think they wisely spend their money for what they're going to get long term. That's my take.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know how it's going to work out for Kiahu switching regions. But I know that at home, if you want to easily switch regions without any complications, no bugs and little things to it, why not use ExpressVPN? It's one of the most trusted VPNs in the world. Everyone knows it. Classically, I've used it a million times when I've been to China and a bunch of other countries. What's brilliant about ExpressVPN, by the way, is they're actually made having a VPN really simple. This isn't like the nerd VPN I had back in the day where you have to like pick the server individually and then you have to wait and then it's giving it the wrong response. You open up like a fucking, like in a command prompt thing and check all the ping and stuff. No, this is like, they literally make it foolproof. You pick your region as a bunch suggested. They have a big, like, almost like red button. You just click, and then it's like connected, off. And as Yamato always told me, if you're someone in the modern day also, by the way, wants to do different things on your PC, he had his set up app-based. So he had it just for the streaming software. It would do the VPN, but then like his normal websites and apps would just go through not of the VPN. So they've also like got advanced tech there if you want it as well. Classically, a reason people like to use VPNs in the modern day is they do actually region lock and assign based on region different things on streaming services, all the ones you can think of. Certain shows and movies will be available in one region, but then another region they're already gone or they never were on there. So it's actually an easy way where, because your internet will be coming from that country, it will just see your country as that and it will serve you that content. You can use the exact same subscription to one of those platforms and get more out of it. So ExpressVPN, you can change your online location up to 105 different countries. So you can try all these different aspects. You also have 3 different plans, so you can customize your experience. You can do a basic plan that's as low as $3.49 a month. And then also, if you actually do manage to get more out of your streaming services, you know how expensive they are. There's a bazillion of them now. They all cost like $10, $15 a month. They're actually going up every month at the moment. Then also, I'm thinking of just some of the things happening at the moment in the world. Right now in the world, people might be complaining about esports content you can't access unless you're in certain parts of the world. Spoiler, the VPN would mean it would think you were coming, let's say, from Europe. If you had a certain streaming platform you wanted to watch, I don't know, I will ball dominate, play against some Koreans or something with his new team. You might need to have access to something like that. If you're just stuck in America, Trumpo hasn't fixed that one. He hasn't put tariffs on fucking KCorp yet. He hasn't been able to get that deal done for you. So if you want to stay winning, you're going to need to switch up the region, much like Busio did. So you can, of course, get a savings. If you go to ExpressVPN, it is at its lowest price ever, and you get 4 extra months of service. So go to expressvpn.com/summoning. That's a price as low as $3.49 a month, plus 4 extra months of service by going to expressvpn.com/summoning. Shout out to ExpressVPN. It's actually what Monty used to use to do the show back in the day, because in Korea, if you host the show just on a Korean normal internet connection, Twitch bizarrely doesn't let you save VODs. It's actually a feature of Twitch Korea for some reason. So he used to have the VPN and trick it, and I think he was in Europe or America, and then it would let him save the VOD. So it was even technically, it's making this episode of Something Insight possible. It was making many episodes of Something Insight possible for recording purposes. Okay, thank you to ExpressVPN. Right, I've got a question for you. I have one last little EU topic, and then we can move on and talk about some other things before we end the show. Right, there is one other story that goes like this, Zaboutine. There's actually like a mini drama. I thought initially this team had just fucked up, which is this brand new team that is called French Flair. So what happened was Trayton, who obviously is a pretty well-known figure within the French esports scene, a core streamer, etc., he made his own new squad. And when you saw the roster on paper, you were like, this guy like secret in LEC? He cooked. Like, he had Adam Toplin, he had Whipple with the role swaps. We've got Fnatic 2020 fucking one back, boys. He got Saken, classic French Flair from KC all those years in the RLs. 3XA Exa, that's basically Exakicks, just rebrand basically, who, if people don't know, was being fought over all the time to be in this season of LEC. Actually, everyone thought was certain he was going to join a team. Maybe even a Fnatic was the rumor, but he just didn't end up there, even though the hype was big. And then Targamas, who's just been kicked out of KC, goes to this squad. The problem is, and here's where the drama comes in, Yapati, as you will know, right? Anyone who knows the classic rules saw, and they were like, wait a minute, that doesn't work though, because there's a rule in the RLs. You're not allowed to just take like last season's G2 and put them in the RL. You can only have so many veterans in the league because they don't want it to be just like the cast-offs of LEC, and there's no place for talent to develop. So if you look technically, it's true. If you look at those players, you can't have like Adam Whippo and Targamas or whatever all at the same time, because they've all just played enough splits. I think it was something like you have to have played within the last 5 splits, 3 of them or so. I forget what the exact rule is. There's a rule about how much you have to have played, basically, and they would be ineligible. Now, here's where the drama comes in. It was claimed, as far as I know, by Trayton himself, that he'd already checked this roster with Riot, though. He'd basically said to them, like, this is my roster. Can you tell me this is okay? And they were basically like, yes, that is fine. So he signs the players, and now he's discovering that, as every fan who said on the internet, turns out the fans were right. Actually, one of these players can't play. And so now Whippo isn't going to be joining as the role swap jungler, which, by the way, also cuts out half the hype of the project. So do you know anything more about this? What is your take on this? Seems like a bizarre set of circumstances.
I feel like we are living in an era where League of Legends esports is in an identity crisis. at all levels. And when you had such strict rules for such a long time, and suddenly nobody wants to watch it because you kind of killed your own esports with all these rules, and your game is getting old and unfun because you tailored your game for your esports instead of making your game fun. You have to do a lot of backpedaling when you Riot Games globally. I don't think it's a ERL or LFL situation, because I think we can. This is part of a broader topic where we can include Los Ratones, Karmine Corp Blue, and a lot of things that are happening overall. I do feel like Riot is panicking about the situation with the game. I think the changes show that they want to put the emphasis of making the game fun again and not esports ready. I think the value of esports and the value of having esport as a traditional esports to the cost of a lot of viewers is something that Riot's not ready to do anymore. They don't want to pay for something that's probably a little bit more rigorous, and they want it to be more entertainment. The problem is you set up all that rules all the time, and no, you end up. So you wanted your team to guarantee contracts for your players, otherwise you couldn't sign them. So that's what the pending Riot approval comes from originally.
Yes.
You cannot hire players under certain terms. Even when I signed players in California, we had to go by California rules of work, which are very, very complex. And Riot would have an added layer of constraints to make sure that every single contract is Riot proof and stuff. The problem is when you start opening your leagues and you start having guest slots, you end up fragilizing all these things. So first, it shouldn't be accessible to get a slot in LFL like this because you're a content creator, because that is so unfair to all these teams that had to make their way up in the past. The problem is because people are not watching the LFL as much. No, Riot and Webedia, the organizer, are desperate for viewership, so they are okay to kind of sell their soul. I think it's still a good move.
Basically, this is like a scaled down version of why Los Ratones has to be the LEC. The same vision of like they're too
exactly.
big.
This is the same thing.
Yeah,
that's why I say it's a broader picture. Right. And so and now you have Adam, Sakan, 3XA, and Bwipo that are signed with no money. What? Riot accepting benevolent players? Or they're accepting like the minimum wage, so you're getting Adam for the minimum wage, but any other team that would sign him would have to pay his salary because he's friend with the owner. Sure. But Riot accept that. The problem is when you've been so strict for 15 years and suddenly you remove the locks, you end up in a Bwipo. Bwipo is just a side effect of just like shooting 12 locks at once for Riot to say we desperately need for consistent views, because if our esports going down, it doesn't look good, because obviously Riot doesn't generate as much money with League of Legends they used to do, and now they have competitors that call Genshin Impact, Zenless Zone Zero, Wuthering Waves, and all these games that like everybody, the average spending is $5,000 for any veteran player, and like the average League of Legends player spends probably like 200 a year, and they're like, how do we keep scaling up on an industry that's not prepared for that? And so they're like, okay, so how do we save at least the fronts of our industry? It's esports. We're gonna make it much more entertaining. The problem is if you come and you shoot 12 locks, you're gonna create a lot of problems, and this is just one of them. I wish I could just speak about the Bwipo situation. I think it's the big picture. It doesn't matter. They're just gonna call a different jungler. He's gonna come and play. They're gonna have their. What happens at the end of the winter split? You're gonna tell everybody the party's over. Los Ratones, thank you for thing. French Flair, thank you for your thing. No, we go back to 3K viewers instead of 30K. No, they can't do that. They're gonna have to backpedal all the way, and then you end up in Counter-Strike or Dota. So you go all the way to like the Valve system. So I think your question is really good, but my answer can only be like the broader picture, which is what does Riot wants to do? Because I do believe that at this point, I don't have any insight, right? But my feeling is no. The live service game with the model of Riot game seems so unprofitable in comparison to other games from the industry. And for an owner like Tencent, they're probably asking Riot is like, how do you guys make more money? Like as much money as these other teams, other companies that we have in our portfolio that generate way more money with way less spending, because esports costs so much money. And so they're trying to navigate that, which with all the rules they set in the past, wanting to be an actual sports. it is very hard, and they're generating a lot of problems along the way. And I think we are just at the very tip of the iceberg. And in the next years, I really want to see how they're gonna play, because the Cadre situation is a privileged situation, the Treton situation is a privileged situation. And although me and all the watchers are extremely happy to watch these games, right? Because we always wanted that.
Yeah.
We always said we want that. What does Riot do with this whole system of contracts and constraints that they had? I don't know. I have no... They're gonna let us know. But I think that the last job I want to get right now is head of esports or head of broadcast for any league in Riot game environment for League of Legends. This is... You are set for failure. There is nothing you can do to get out of this situation.
I actually think for the short-term win, you have actually created a lose-lose situation, Zaboutine. Here's why. The short-term win is what you just said. The pure novelty and the thrill of it all. We're all here for that. We're all here to watch the crazy drama of Los Ratones play here and Nemesis back in LEC. And plus, well, the core streaming stuff's going to be crazy. But the problem you have is this. I actually think either way it's bad, because if it doesn't work, right, let's say it doesn't have a crazy impact on LEC, and it doesn't have the hype that you imagine, and Cage's stream numbers are the same as normal. Well, he's already implied, by the way, he's going to play hardball pro. If after this split, that's it. It's just a one split thing. The implication is maybe I just shut down Los Ratones completely and the whole project's gone. And by the way, if the reason you can't let that happen if you're Riot is because, one, right now for LEC on English language, you need Cadle to turn that stream on. Like, you are so desperate. I mean, supposedly in Valorant, they just punished Ibai's team, MCoy, by taking their slot away because they had a contract that said that Ibai will stream, and he wasn't doing it, mate. Suppose he was sending other people from his team to do the stream, so it wasn't getting Ibai numbers. Well, the problem here is, I know why Ibai didn't stream, mate. He doesn't need to. He does like boxing and shit, mate. He is so much bigger than doing a League of Legends broadcast. He only needs to do it if you make it worth his time. So the real problem you're going to get is this. If you guys think it's already bad enough they've sort of catered to Cadrel, they sort of have to. Like, he's so huge right now, you'd be a fool not to just try and get this guy involved in any way. So I think here's why you're fucked. If it doesn't work, maybe he really just leaves and shuts the whole project down, in which case a lot of the hype... By the way, no one's ever going to watch NLC without Los Ratones. It's a fucking irrelevant league where people get paid nothing. People aren't even going to care about EU Masters as much now, unless, by the way, this is a permanent system and winning it gets you in the LEC. That would make people more interested. And then lastly, here's why you fucked up. Let's say it does work. Let's say it goes awesome. Bro, people really haven't thought this one through, right? If Los Ratones actually is a top team, what, and then we're just going to send them away after one split? Mate, that you've created a terrible situation. Now everyone except the other team owners is going to want them to stay in. So the pressure's going to be, just like with Fearless Draft that was only supposed to be for winter, the pressure's going to be just say it's permanent now. Somehow they're in the LEC. Whatever excuse you give, maybe Riot has to pay each of the teams a few million. Maybe they cover the cost. Whatever it is, you're gonna, at that point, you are going to almost be forced to do it. And if you do it, by the way, these teams were actually reasonably polite, just leaking shit and saying they didn't like it during this off-season of Worlds, mate. Those teams could literally probably do like a fucking mad lawsuit, or there's all sorts of shit that gets involved when you bought a franchise slot for the kind of money that like BDS and fucking Karmine Corp paid. Like, they paid speaking of buying at the top, mate, they were buying shit for like 30 million. And remember, I always tell people this, some of the buy-ins that they got, they didn't even buy the whole slot. They bought like a percentage and they get to put their name on it, but like a tiny bit still owned by like whatever, Astralis or the other. Like, they got absolutely wrecked. Meanwhile, Cadrel gets to walk in. I pay him nothing. He just used to be famous. He wants to be on my stream. I pay the whole orgs. We're never going to come close to playing a franchise fee. Can we play it? Oh, yeah, we're in the league. And then lastly, imagine the best case scenario. You do know the best case scenario would actually be they win LEC and they go to first stand. Bro, how do you kick them out if they go to first stand? Like, I think Riot, this is why part of me feels like Zaboutine. I don't think they have a plan. I think they're just trying stuff and they're gonna figure it out every 2 months. I don't think there's a whiteboard with a big plan written on it. I just don't believe it. I don't know what the plan would say. What would it say?
I'd say that was, I used the metaphor. They didn't undo the locks. They shot them. They literally took a 9mm and just like shot the locks. And they're like, oh, slots, boom. LFL, boom. Competitive integrity, having Karmine Blue, 2014, boom. They don't care because they know they have to do something to keep it fresh. Yes. And Fearless Draft didn't change anything, as I predicted. Like, the watchers of League just watch League, and the people who don't. And I think they are like back back to the wall, and it's very interesting as a viewer. But I would say Monty must be fuming, man. Monty must be fuming because all the things like he really like got dragged into the dirt for doing very minor things. He had seen already like I remember that it was the EG and TSM thing where like there was like inverted, shareholding, and it was just a slap on the wrist. I just feel like esports is consolidating itself into a hybrid format where we need outsiders. I don't think being a CS pro and being in different country every month and having to compete the whole year is very healthy. But we have to converge as an industry towards something that's more healthy. And I think the publisher only on full control industry with a set rule that never changes is absolutely fucking dog shit on the long run. Like, I do understand the thing of comparing League of Legends of 2013 to League of Legends now, but since the game is patched every 2 weeks anyway, we know they're not playing the same game. So please, I want to have an ATP style. Like, I've always vouched for an ATP style where you have your ATP ranking and being number one ATP is important, but then you have your 4 Grand Slam tournaments, which all have their specific set of rules. And being the best of all time would be to win the 4 Grand Slam in a row, which no tennisman has ever been able to do, while having Federer and Nadal and stuff. But there is always this story of Nadal beating Federer, preventing from doing the Grand Slam, and we're still waiting for the elected one who's gonna do that. And I think that League, we shouldn't speak about the Golden Road. World should not be the only one thing we look at for a year. We should have these seasons where the thing is way more open, and there are these majors, and Riot has some partners that are part of the major, but some part of the industry is open because we want these underdog stories where 5 players just gather together like Mikix wants to do in SK, and have all these things living together with tournament organizer, different rule sets. Like, for instance, first split is fearless, second split is this. Make it interesting for people and fresh, and stop having that, like, this obsession over control from Riot Game has really killed their own esports to the point where it's faulty, and all backpedaling they look like a fool and they don't know what to do with it. I do think they need a vision of being like, let it go in one, like kind of all at once, and not try to, tightly, just like unknot the esports, because this is gonna look way worse. Like, what they're currently doing is way worse than saying we'll reimburse all the slots, and now we're gonna be semi-open, and we're just gonna be like Valve. We're gonna put a lot of money on 4 majors a year. These are gonna be our partners. We still organize Worlds. The rest is you. The rest is you guys. I think that would be much better for everyone. Even though there is less money for everyone, I do think at the end of the day, I think there is a Darwinism in any industry where you need to generate your own cash. Coming from France and Europe, I was very puzzled by like the American esports that was spending money they didn't generate. In France, you have to, in Europe, you have to generate because investors don't spend like 200K for no reason, just because they can. And I do believe that esports needs to be sustainable at any single level. And for that, we need to have this Darwinism of letting the people who have the best ID, the best scouting, the best player, the best format, the best tournament survive, and centralizing everything around one entity, because it favors them, doesn't work anymore. And Riot is paying the price of their absolute madness of control over the years.
By the way, I think the KCB thing is almost more scandalous than the Los Ratones entry. The problem is, like, here's what I think's utterly mental about this. Like, miss me with this whole shit that the French fans are saying of like, yes, but once you said that the winner would have to get promoted, you have to. No, that's how it works. Like, first of all, Riot didn't really have to sit there and go, what the hell? There's academy teams in that. They already knew they were in ERLs. Like, you could literally have put a stipulation in that announcement, like, asterisk, but obviously if it's an academy team, you have to sell the squad or you stay in the ERL with it, right? That, by the way, the reason why that's such an obvious thing, they did that in Challenger the entire fucking time. The entire time. Cloud9 had 1 million squads that got really good, and they had to sell them to become the LCS teams. That used to be a little business they used to fucking run back then. There wasn't some rule like, sorry, since you qualified, I guess it's Cloud9 this team against Cloud9. No, you knew you could only be one Cloud9. Secondly, the idea that you're going to allow 2 teams to play in the same tournament is mental. because we have no way from the outside of knowing if anything shady would happen. It's incredibly difficult because it's the same org. And I'll tell you the angle no one even brought up, so I waited for Summoning Insight to bring this up. And by the way, this is a topic that would have made Monty go mental, is, you know this, Zaboutine, back in the day in Korea, the entire system was sister teams. The reason they had super OP practice is you really could, behind closed doors, have a whole scrim that nobody got any information about. So when it became like semis of LCK, that's all they were doing, bro. It's like my sister team, a bit like a UFC fighter, pretends to be like you, and then I practice against them, and then I practice every now and then elsewhere, but I don't do the things I'm doing in that scrim, so I can have secret tech, right? Riot came in for LCK and said, no more of that. This isn't allowed. You have to get rid of all your sister teams, merge all the talent into one. So there was no Blaze and Frost. It was CJ Enters then. You had to merge it all. And then 10 years later, you're like, lol, just kidding. In LEC, you can just have your academy team. What? If I was the Koreans, I would lose my mind, bro. You took my entire approach to esports, crippled it, said it was banned, and then just in one region, because you've got a really big core streamer, they're just allowed to do it in their region. What? This is madness. That's actually nuts, bro.
And the root was from StarCraft, right? You always had this key player, and then you had the trainee of you could wake up at 3 a.m. and be like, I want to set the strat, just get on the computer, and all these trainees would become eventually top players as well. Because and I really like this system. I think I do believe like the strongest year of Korea was still 2014. Like looking back at it, it was absurd how strong Korea was that year. I really enjoyed, like, it solved so many problems, but once again, I hate academies. I'm one of the few guys within the industry that say academies are like really, because I come from LCS and I see like it's just a lie. It's just a lie. It's just, even Casey having an academy, I say that publicly, I got such a backlash for that, but it's like, you're just keeping the players. I don't want you to have an academy. I want someone else to get your academy, put his name on it, and try to compete for your spot in LEC.
Yes.
That's what I want. I want promotion and relegation. I want nobody to have two teams. And I want everybody to use their own IDs and skills to try to get to the top. And I want it to be fair in a way that nobody can have two teams. Because that should be how the competition is. They shouldn't be like, I don't know, we don't have this in traditional sports, but like you wouldn't have like PSG2 going into the Champions League because, you know, they can have two teams in the league. Oh, that makes no sense. So give KCB, they give KCBS, give Vitality B, remove all these teams, give them to influencers, give them to people that want to build teams, make it a little bit more open, give up and downs the way we had. Like we had it figured out. In 2015, 2016, there was a Challenger Series, and then you had the up and down, and everybody was hype about it, and then you could join the LEC. Just keep that system. It was great. I don't know why you guys went for the whole closed, behind closed door system, but no, having the worst of both worlds is egregious. That's the only thing, is because we're still in a franchise where SK is coasting, but now we have KCB. That is you have an academy that you promoted, which shouldn't be an academy because there should be promotion, but there's not been promotion. But this year there is promotion, but you're still paying some teams that paid before, some rev share of that league. It's like, it just doesn't work. Like we have to make a major shift, like a Marshall Plan of what we want to do with League of Legends esports, and has to come from LA. Like the people in LA has to sit down and, you know, swallow the bitter pill of, yeah, we fucked up, but come with like a proper solution for esports. Because like with China not renewing talent because of all the rules around gaming, with the current state of American League of Legends, with the decisions they're making with Europe, we are slowly converging towards a Brood War situation with or early Overwatch situation where nobody cares about the esports that's happening on the West and only people watch Korean tournaments. This is a risk that seems very far, I think, for Riot, but they have to acknowledge that it is really just next door. If they do one or two bad decisions, they are two bad decisions away of transforming League of Legends into StarCraft 2.
By the way, I also do think as well, I totally agree with the promotion relegation thing. I even told people when they first implemented like just franchise, the first thing this will immediately do is you will get a million unfair examples of players being good enough who just can't get in, because now it's not actually about how good you are. It's about if a GM selects you. Whereas the difference would be, think of some of the names I mentioned in this episode, bro. Think about Upset. Trymbi, people like that. If you didn't sign them to the top 10 LEC teams, but there was a promotion thing, mate, someone would sign them. And someone like this, like, for example, the French Flair lineup, the joke is upset playing that team and he'd beat fucking the worst team, pick who you think they are. And then he'd be in the LEC. You wouldn't be able to stop him being in the LEC. There would be no, like, nah, he's not the right fit for our team. He'd just force his way in. And the talent would always rise to the top. And also, by the way, you'd then eliminate the people who are just the bombs. You can't just hang around in 9th place for 2 years and then go, lol, now I'm serious. No, you'd have been kicked out ages ago. You lost your spot. I understand the problem is you've already gone too far because you made everyone buy in for all these massive amounts. Then you've let people sell slots for 20 million. So once you do that, it's insane to let people just be promoted with nobody. In fact, when I even look at this French Flair lineup, mate, that is the type of roster you would make to win a promotion slot, and then you just have an 100%. LEC team. Yeah. Whereas I know what you mean. Way too many of the academies also. This is why I agree with that Karmine Corp point. Too many of the academy or ERL squads are also very cynical, bro. They're not actually building here's what an academy is, bro. An academy you'd have maybe 1 or 2 veterans, and they'd mainly be people who they're not good enough for LEC, but they're just there for veteran qualities. You know, they bring a good personality, they could be a captain. But I'm only having them there to like anchor the team. The other 3 positions, no matter what they are, I would only sign you if in the best case scenario, one day I can promote you. If I actually have like fucking Mickey X in my real team in LEC, I'm not wasting my time signing a really good support player, even though they will in these leagues because they want to win the RL. I'd only sign you to the position. So my joke would be if I had Mickey X in my LEC team, then I'm going to put my veteran in the fucking support position. So that's not even a position we're worried about. He's not even worried about that. He's just there to do his job. But let's say my mid laner is Larson, who's a bit dodgy right now in LEC. Now I'm putting the shit hot mid laner in that. And you know, if you do really well in these 2 ARL splits and EU Masters, mate, you're in the LEC team. That's actually what an academy should be. The problem in the modern day, mate, is most people's ERL team is just trying to win the ERL split. It's almost like managed like a separate project. It's why I actually agreed with a lot of Peter Dunn's takes that if we're going to have the current system, people like Fnatic are fools for not having an academy squad because they can never find the next player before he's a top talent. They only find out about him when he's already at the top of the ERLs, at which point they need all the money, which they don't have. So like the joke is for someone like a Fnatic, they should have an academy squad. That's the only way they could get a talent that's cheap and build him up and put him into their team. So no, I know what you mean. Right now, essentially, they're in the worst of all worlds with the academy system right now, mate. And now the idea you can occasionally get into an LEC team, it's even more crazy. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know what you're just devaluing for the other teams in the league, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I mean, I know some teams that are like so fuming because they've been playing players like they cannot afford having Saken or Adam, you know, because the worst part is, I don't know if you were aware, there is a salary cap in LFL.
Oh, right. Okay.
There is actually a salary cap. So you are under constraint of salary cap, and French Fair arrives with a team that would be by far the most expensive team. And it's like, no. So the problem is you destroy the fairness, and they are like, this is an origin team, right? It's like they come for the spot. They are aiming for the LEC title with that, and even Treton said, we are aiming to be the best possible because I don't want this player to stay at the end of the year. I want them to go back in LEC, right? I want just to kind of showcase them that they deserve a slot in LEC. But that's so pitiful that we have to go towards these type of small projects to actually get players that should get in LEC because the GMs are bad, but they can't even prove themselves through the Ascension system because there is none, and they're eventually resolved to play in ERL with a free slot with benevolent salaries to kill the ERL ecosystem to actually showcase that they're great. Like I don't even know what we're doing at this point. I think it's one of the worst year for League of Legends esports in terms of structural integrity.
Oh.
I don't think I've seen a year, probably back in season 1 or season 2, there were things like this. But like this is the biggest backpedaling, and it is done in a very, it gives a poor taste in the mouth of every single former partner of Riot. So I know you guys on the Four Horsemen and stuff, I watched all of them, you're like, it's never great to be a long-term partner of Riot because they take 90 degrees turn here and there.
We always use the joke from Lord of the Rings. It's like that line that Gandalf says to Saruman. It's like Sauron doesn't share power. That's what it feels like with Riot. Like, look, they're willing to, well, it helps them to feel like you get power, but as soon as it doesn't, they cast you off, mate.
And I feel bad for the GX, for the Heretics, for the Solaris,
yes,
all these middle of the pack teams that never were able to reach a big audience, and people, the fans, the plebs will say, oh, but just create an audience. That's not how it works, guys. If you don't win, you don't create an audience, and nobody can, not everyone can have Kameto, Ibai, and Kaidrel to lead their teams. It's not a scalable model. So at the end of the day, we end up in an industry where like I don't see how we incentive the next generations to partake in that. So for me, we accelerate the death of the esports by decredibilizing. I don't know if it's a word in English, but like we just remove credibility from the whole system.
Delegitimizing, yeah.
Yeah,
no, I agree.
That's my whole take.
By the way, for anyone who hasn't figured it out yet, because we're going to have different co-hosts, obviously Zaboutine's main specialty is LEC, so I thought for this episode, I don't do the Best Damn League show during the off-season anyway. That ended the second that the season ended, so no one's heard any EU stuff aside. And also, EU was actually the region me and Yamato didn't talk about as much, because I have a whole show during the season where I talk for an hour plus just about LEC, so I thought we'd do mainly your specialty for this, for most of the episode, but we'll address a few other things. So one thing I did want to ask you about, and this is a bit of an open-ended topic, is as well as all the things that have happened this year, all the dramas, all the mess, right at the end, Riot just like, quietly dropped that they're changing fucking League of Legends to a massive degree. Zaboutine, they haven't just come in now and done one, they haven't just changed jungle. Just, these changes look like they're going to have enormous impact, as you said earlier, when you were referencing like how the game will play, like even laning is going to be completely different now. Give me some thoughts. Like, first of all, what do you think are the biggest changes? And then give me some projections, some speculation. What do you think the impact of these changes will be? So what are the big changes for you?
I feel like we all got hooked by playing League of Legends because people play League of Legends to feel powerful with their champion. I do think that's the aim. People say they want the LPs, the ranks. That is a lie that people keep telling themselves. I think these publishers are really good at keeping you trapped in the hamster wheel of trying to lose LPs and being frustrated, because there have been so many studies on like the relationship with like frustration and money spending on live service games. At this point, it is not a secret anymore for anyone who's willing to read a little bit about it. I think that's Riot's, as I say, is kind of in a panicking mode, and they're like, oh, maybe we need to give player what they want, which is really powerful. They used to do that. That's why the game got very popular. That's how esports started, is because everybody wanted to feel powerful, and who was the most powerful? Them all. And then because they wanted the esports to be good, I think they narrowed the experience in a way that the game is very fair and balanced. Balanced was the whole thing. It has to be balanced. Everything is OP. We nerf, we balance, to the point where the game felt extremely numb. Launching a game the last 2-3 years, it felt miserable. Like, I play League of Legends, but I don't care about my rank. I just want to have fun. This is not a fun game because there is no situation where I feel powerful with my champion. Finally, I think Riot is bringing back some ways to reach this level of power for certain classes, and I think it's necessary by any means. Like you don't, especially now you're competing with games. Like I'm watching my wife play Where Wins Meet, like the recent service game. This is all you want from a game. Like you have your own character. If you want to play with people, you can. If you don't want to play with people, you can just play by yourself. Like, these live service games of exactly the same type of shops that League of Legends offers, but you don't have the constraints. You play at your pace. You feel powerful, and if you're like super OP, you're beating monsters anyway. So the glory of being the best at the PvP game of your friend group is not the thing anymore. Like, I don't think it's that cool to be the best at games anymore. It's more so to be entertaining with game, being able to stream and be able to tell a story within your game and feel powerful and have fun. Riot is finally shifting to this paradigm because they have way more competitors now. I think that even a game like Repo is a competitor of League of Legends. Like, it's fighting for people's time. And when you come back from work, you have the choice between playing Repo and playing ARAMs, because you don't want to play Summoner's Rift because it's too complex and dull and boring and everybody's flaming each other. You just don't play League of Legends. So they have to bring back people. I think they did the arena mode, which is kind of rogueliking the game, which is great. And doing that as well for the ARAM is... I hate ARAMs, but I play ARAM Chaos because I think they're great. Bringing that into the game and giving people way more ability to get power and feeling powerful was long overdue, like 3 or 4 years overdue. It's gonna destroy a lot of the competitive part of the game, but I'm excited for it because I think that the game was very much figured out. And because all the layer of skill expression from previous seasons got destroyed, the side lane management, you can't slow push a wave anymore, the way the wave interacted with each other, the way vision was understood, the way the game felt extremely telegraphed. Everybody would, even in Division 2, I could find players who could literally recitate how a game of League of Legends should be played. We do not want that. What we want is individual skill expression. I want a team that's good at objective. I want a team that's good at split pushing. I want a team that's good in laning. I want different win conditions and being able to get an edge from that and feel powerful from that. I do think Riot is moving towards the right decision. From all the things I've heard, the whole esports part is horrible and the whole game part is phenomenal. I'm extremely excited for what's coming next year for League of Legends.
So I will say, I think Riot was very, very stupid. Like, here's the obvious area they fucked up. I think that by making it balanced, they actually made the mistake. Like obviously everyone will know where this take's coming from if you watch someone in fight long enough. I think they made like the junglers and supports way too fucking strong in League of Legends, bro. Like, what MOBA is this? Like if people don't know, people like Kerry have made it absolutely broken, bro. Remember when Kerry would play those ADCs and he would do the most damage in the game as the fucking support player? Like, what are we doing? That's an insane concept if you know the original like Dota and League of Legends when it first began. So first of all, I think obviously the mistake you've made there is when everyone in the game can carry and is powerful, then nobody is powerful and nobody is the carry. Like, that's just stupid. Like that would be like if you recreated football so that every position had shots on goal all the time. Like, it would be stupid if the defender was scoring 20 goals a season and your striker had 15 as well. What is striking anymore at that point in time? Like, what would the point in the position be? So I know what you mean, because when I think of the glory days of League of Legends, it's actually when like teams and players decide the way the map is played. Like, you think about like Mata that revolutionized how you do the split map. You think about how like G2 rotated around, etc., and could give up the dragon stuff. You can't do these things later on. I always say they made the objectives and the laning like Fisher Price, like as in it's a little kid's version, you know. It's like, press these 3 buttons, up, time to go to the dragon, up, now it's time to go to the baron, up, now it's time for the base rate. Like, it just made everything obvious. I know what you mean. It's like the beauty of the open canvas that you did the art with, it's just gone. And in fact, one of the most criminal ones of all time easily was like making it so everything was a team fight around the dragon. Bro, our region, Europe, was making masterpieces with genius side laners who could fucking keep the like dynamic of the game so you never could quite like pull them to the fight. And then they could fucking use the wave manipulation to attack a lane they're not even in. Like, there was so many things there that coaches and great shot callers could have fun with and do things with. And then Riot just said like, nah, but because essentially, like, this is always the problem when you do it this way. It's always that an idiot can't do it. Since an idiot can't do it, let's ban a genius from doing it. Like, that's not how you play sports, guys. I always think if game developers existed in real life, like God, essentially, mate, all they do is just nerf all the best players in the history of sports. They'd nerf Michael Jordan's fucking jump. They'd nerf Cristiano Ronaldo's header. Messi's dribbling would be nerfed. Like, it'd be shit. They'd just make the best player would only be able to be an 8 out of 10. You know what I mean? And they'd make all the roles quite, like I say, whereas actually what we love about sport and especially competition is when people are OP. In real life, if Khabib is the most OP at wrestling, you don't nerf wrestling. You go, well, tough shit to all you guys who can't wrestle like him. He's going to be fucking kicking your ass till he retires. Do something about it. That's what's cool. We actually embrace people's dominance. They didn't go, oh, Mike Tyson's knocking too many people out. Maybe we should make it so you're not allowed to knock people out. Like, that's the whole reason we're all tuning in. He might just knock this guy out in 10 seconds flat. So, no, I know what you mean. I do think that's a part of the miss. So actually, I saw some of these changes that are extreme. But, bro, I'm sort of in for some, like you say, what the idea people have to 1v1 lane against me top lane and I'm some god tier laner. Mate, people like Photon must be like, where was this the last 5 years? If that had been that, I'd probably still be on Vitality. You know what I mean? Like, there's people who have skills in these. My boy Alfari must be like, really, Riot? Really? At the end of when I was playing, you had to rotate to the dragon every 5 minutes. Now you can just lane top lane for 15 minutes. That would have been my glory days, mate. This would have been my... Also, I just think of all the... By the way, here's another thing, Zaboutine. The reason that nerfed the game is all the best players, almost by default, are the best laners. That's just League anyway. So all you did is take the best players and say, we're going to just even it up against you and just a random guy. I know what you mean. They made the conception of the game too simple. Like, have it be enough that it's not insanely, it shouldn't be impossibly complicated, but they made it, like you say, it was just paint by numbers, mate. It was too basic the last few years.
The big difference is the value of one player is really 1-to-1 in League of Legends. Dota, you can have one player that's worth 3,
Yes.
right? And you can have a player that's like worth 3 at the beginning of the game and worth literally nothing a minion later in the game. But if he's done his job, right?
Yeah.
It's really like a real bridge. Like you're playing Azir and Kalista. Kalista take care of the early game, and then it's only Azir. Like Dota really has this.
Yeah.
But League of Legends has so much. They wanted every role to have 50% win rate in every single layer of level, from Iron to top challenger. That ended up in a situation where outnumbering your opponents is the only way to get the lead. And this is how you end up in 5v5 at Drakes. And what roles don't have to farm and don't have to be in lanes? Junglers and supports. So by default, if you don't want your laners to have something ahead of your jungle and your support in terms of resources, then you set your game for failure, because it's only a team's game. But there is nothing worse. Like, we ended up at the point where ignoring wave was the best thing. Like, you look at this year, how many times I see someone lose 15 CS in lane because there is a swap lane and the top laner loses like a whole level, and then there is catch-up XP, and magically he plays Ambessa, and 25 minutes later he comes back and wins the game. I remember 2017, 2016, I remember reviewing lanes with players like, oh, I lost 4 CS there. Yeah, I was just weak the whole game, because on this timing I should be trading and I couldn't, and then this guy just slow pushed the wave and it was over. Like, that is something I want to see more of, because I think that, for instance, and we do this hot take, so we work way more with storylines on the hot take podcast, but the whole storyline on Chovy being on par with like Faker throughout the year is only if you can win a team fight with Galio at 25 minutes.
Yes.
Because you can skip literally 20 or 30 or 40 CS and still be a champion in the game. In
But
a lot of games.
to draw the contrast, Zaboutine, if this was 10 years ago, Chovy would just like 1v9 half these games, wouldn't he? He'd be so powerful
100%.
back on the lane, he'd be impossible to beat, wouldn't he?
Losing, I remember counting and being in reviews with players, even my time is 2018, is not that far ago, and be like, oh, he's 12 CS down, he's really behind. 12 CS was like a bad matchup. No, you're like, oh yeah, he's 30 CS down. Oh, what a great play. They just won the game. And it's like, I want agency to go back to players. And it's not, it seems trivial because we're speaking about esports, but you have to understand that this cascades at every single layer of skill and mastery of champions. And everybody's going to feel better about playing their champion to the full potential because this is fun. And why do we play games to start with? It's to have fun. That's why people shift away from competitive games, because it's hard and it's not fun.
No, by the way, one
Rocket...
thing you said earlier that I wanted to touch on is it's actually something Richard Lewis, I know people don't think of him as a League guy, but by the way, he's played loads of Dota, and he actually did play a decent amount of League back in the day. One thing he said, and I think this is the best description I've ever heard, the reason why solo queue in all these games fucking sucks is, and this proves what you're saying, bro, you know, people think when you play ranked, you just want to win the game and get the points. No, because if that was true, here's what every top laner would do in solo queue. You know, the top laner that plays Renekton and he dies twice, he would go, right, all I'm doing now is building like fucking tank items. I'm not going to die again in lane. Carry me bot lane and AD. No. We all know every player, actually, you nailed it, wants to carry. So when I'm 0-2 as a top laner, well, I want to carry, so I'm going to keep going till I'm either 0-10 or I turn this around and I'm 10-2. That's what every player in solo queue does, and that's why solo queue fucking sucks. If you're a pro player trying to practice, or you're someone who wants to like play a proper game and you want to win the game, no one will let themselves be carried, because as you said, that's not what people play League for. People play League so they get to feel like they're the raid boss who no one can kill, and they're destroying everyone, they're dominant. I agree with you. I think that's actually the real thrill of League, and clearly they did not create that atmosphere the last few years.
No, it was completely the opposite. And I feel like this is such a... I've never understood that. And I spoke so many times. But really, it was probably the strongest opposition I had, because people are so brainwashed by the League and the LPs and the PNG next to their nickname. Like, they're really able to ship a terrible product on the name of competitive integrity. And I always say to people, I don't play League because I play Rocket League. Because in Rocket League, it's hard, but when I do something, I'm like, no shit, I did that. It feels so great when I land a great shot on Rocket League. League, I don't really have that. Like, yeah, I'm going to do like one parry with Fiora here and there that was like dope, or I'm going to do like one sidestep. But most of my time, I'm just going to push waves, wait for someone to do some whack whack movement on the map because nobody understands the game anyway. Who does understand the game? Everybody would just come and brawl. So just like let people come and brawl and get powerful if they're good at it, and stop pretending it's strategy game if nobody wants the strategy part of it. And I think it's much better that way because pros will find a strategy anyway.
Yes.
That's the reality is in any game, no matter how broken it is, top players will find a meta and a way to play the game strategically because once the tactic is maxed, the strategy always comes. It's the same thing in chess, it's the same thing in any game. Even Rocket League and football has this thing, it's dynamic game, but eventually you end up with like positions and strategy because the game normalizes around a certain skill cap. But I want everyone to enjoy the chance to be powerful in a game, including the games I'm watching. There is nothing worse than watching an Azir having 4 kills, and it's like, oh, he's 5 minutes early on his Nashor Tooth. Like, that's it? Yeah. Now I want to see Upset gaining like 6 kills in an early game and having 7-8 items by 25 minutes against... And the enemy top laner is Mirvin playing Fiddlesticks level 19 with 3 summoner spells, and we see who's the best. Like that I'm stoked for that.
No, I'm with you. I've always thought the best way to let the game be played is the players and their talent and ingenuity designs the game. Riot's always took this top-down approach. Like they even do it with this fucking lens box. Oh, you're not playing the game right. I didn't mean for you to do that. I say, who the fuck are you? You just make the sandbox, mate, and set us free. We figure the rest out. Yeah, I'm with you. And as we pointed out with some of those player examples, I do think it's actually limited, like the top players from how good they could be. Like I don't think it's a coincidence that as soon as that Tracker's Knife era ended and they switched the game, magically the LPL won like 3 of the next 4 years or something mental, mate. Meanwhile, all they'd done for about 5 years was just team fight and skirmish the whole time. So when Riot made the game, so that's what it was. Magically they can win. Whereas before that, when Koreans could just basically, they were the meme if they were playing chess and fucking LPL was playing checkers, and they used to just win every single time. Because chess is a more fucking strategical game. I know what you mean. I agree. Right, okay, here's what we're going to do. There is one last ad, and it is going to be for Shopify. So, obviously, at LFN, this is a company, and I can tell you, when you set up a company, it might seem as simple as like, oh, well, you already have like a skill at something, or you have an idea, just set up a company, people say. That is the hardest part. Like, basically, setting up a company involves loads and loads of different skills. Like, you have to have people who know web design. Then once you have the website, you have to have like a secure e-commerce platform that everything's connected to properly, so none of the orders go fucked up or nothing like fucks up the credit card thing, or you can't be scammed by people, etc. You also, by the way, when you have an e-commerce platform, you want a trusted one that people have already used before and that they feel safe. I know it's not 2002, but people still know you can get ripped off on the internet, especially if it's a scoffed thing where the design look. Then, even if you have an amazing website with amazing product, right? Here's the question: do you have all the marketing tools? Do you know how to like email people? Do you know how to set things up? Do you know how to check all your analytics? Do you have good SEO? All of this. Well, the good thing is, I can tell you at LFN, this took a long time for us to settle up. Like the joke of why Monty doesn't do this show now is so that he could put all of his time into the marketing and getting the ads and ads like this Shopify one. So Shopify takes all of that out of the equation. They can handle all that sort of thing for you. By the way, obviously this ad is brought to you by Shopify. Did you know that something like 10% of all e-commerce from the US, including household brands like Gymshark, for example, are via the startups that just began, and Shopify is the one behind all these. They have all these platforms, all these different people already using it. If you're willing to join now, it's already been tested by everyone. It all works. So they have their own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates that you can basically have a really quick website and store made immediately that'll suit the style of your brand. You can also accelerate content creation. They have AI tools that'll help you do the product descriptions or the headlines to pages, or even take your photography and like enhance it and suit it to the page better. If you want to get all the word out there, they can help you make an email campaign, a social media campaign. Essentially, it's like having your own little marketing team. And of course, they have loads of expertise on things like how do you manage the inventory of goods? How do you do international shipping? How do you process returns, etc. like that when someone doesn't want the product and they return it, or there's a flaw with it? These are all things that when you're first doing a business, you're going to have to learn the hard way, and you're going to fall down all the pitfalls. This just takes care of it for you. It makes it really easy, really smooth, really professional. So as they say, if you're ready to sell, then you're ready for Shopify. So turn your big business idea into a Cha-ching with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 a month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/summoning. So go to shopify.com/summoning. That's shopify.com/summoning. Cha-ching. Shopify is your best friend to help you start selling online. Right. I thought at the end, what we could do is this. We do have a thing where fans can ask questions. So do you want to do a little couple of minutes break and we'll come back and do 10 minutes of fan questions and then we'll wrap, yeah?
Well, we can even do them now and then we're good, depending on...
Fuck it then. Don't do the break then. I'm good.
Yeah.
Are you good to keep going, producer?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just roll through then. Right. So basically, how you ask a question, obviously, I don't know yet who the co-host will be for the next episode, will be you go to the LFN Discord, subscribe there, and then there's a section. By the way, actually, you can ask Zaboutine a question anyway, because we have the hot takes one, don't we? So you can also submit your hot take via the same process. There's an SI questions channel, there's a CS hot takes channel, there's a League of Legends hot takes channel. These are for all our shows. There's a 4 Horsemen channel. It's just, I can't often get them to do the bloody questions on that one, even though I do tell them every time. So I'm going to go now myself and read the questions out here and put them to Zaboutine. So here's the first one. And remember, if you don't want me to say your name, mention, like, please don't say my name, whatever, because otherwise I'm just going to mention who you are. So here's a good one. We won't do all of them. I'll just ask for a couple for this. So Danio says, what league champion would you choose for each position that's the most important for a pro player to master based on the fundamentals of, like, the meta? So he gives the example, for jungle, should it be Lee Sin or something, you know? Right, we won't do all 5 because that could be like 20 minutes as well, but let's do a couple. What would you say? Like, give me an example of a role, and then you think this is, if you want to be pro, this is like the champion that if you can master this, you could have a good career at that role. What would you pick?
Orianna.
Some mid lane there?
Because I think that Orianna has all the fundamentals tools, and probably the best tools for all these fundamentals, because you need to pressure in lane. But that's not a champion that does a lot of damage early on, meaning that if you do not know how to play conservative, and you don't have really an escape tool as well, or just a panic button, so you need to be very consistent, and consistency win you so many games in League of Legends. And the second thing is the understanding of space, like the way you put your balls to deny opponents access to certain spaces, especially around choke points and objectives, is like what differs a good and a bad Orianna. You see plenty of guys that are like able to play Orianna very consistently in lane. They get leads, they even get kills, but they never have these pressure. It's not about just the shockwave. People are like, oh, it's a 5-man shockwave. A 5-man shockwave is first a mistake from the opponents, or there was another threat that forced everyone to not consider the Orianna, meaning that you already understand where the threat comes from your own team, and where the sheep are gonna go, you're gonna cut them with your ball, giving them an impossible choice. And if you do understand that, it means that you really understand the strategical aspect, the positional aspect of League of Legends, which usually is the last layer of like expertise in this game. So a great mid laner, he can play Azir, but Azir gives you so many tools to peel yourself, to do damage, to go on side lane. Orianna doesn't have any of these tools, but if you look, all the best mid laners in history have a good Orianna, and the reason is they do understand how the game works at a fundamental level, and Orianna has all the tools if you're a good player.
Yes.
I would say this one.
I'll also say as well, the reason why I'm glad he didn't pick Azir is I do think actually Azir has just a too OP a kit for learning, mate. As you say, it has to self-peel. You can just fucking escape. Like, if you die on that, you're an idiot, mate. So the difference is, Orianna, you better watch where you step when you're doing that. It's also what I love about it. It's why I think it's actually one of the best designed champions in the history of League of Legends when you consider how old it is. Mate, it will always be, like, even if it isn't relevant in pro play, it will always be a solo queue champion. That champion can match up against other champions any time in history because of the kit. The kit is just brilliant. First of all, it does demand proper laning. But I agree with you. It's the way people use it in team fights, bro. Because literally the entire skill, my boy Ryu, who's back in fucking, what is it, Animal Life now, or Gen G, one of the two. I think it's Gen G. He used to be the master at it, mate. He never did the fucking ult. He just kept that. He zoned you off 24/7 because he was so scared he was going to do the ult on you. That's mad OP if you have a really good ADC in your team. Like, that guy's just going to feast on that team fight because they can't ever get in on him. And then also, the reason I also like the Orianna kit is, unlike a lot of OP mid laners, it isn't like some Syndra shit where the second you get the opening, you just dump all your abilities in like 0.1. You actually have to be like layered with how you attack in a team fight with an Orianna. Like, you have to position, you have to use them correctly. It's like a consistent damage champion for me. So no, I agree with you. I think it's a banger. There's a reason why it's endured all eras of League of Legends.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pick another role then. What would another role be?
ADC, I think it's too telegraphed. They all do the same. I would love to slot Gragas, but Gragas is too versatile. But I think he's one of the best fundamental champs in the game. I'm gonna put Renekton. I do think Renekton really has, because it's like it gives you power, but at a cost of you cannot really fall behind. So just using Renekton, and you see like the good and the bad Renektons, because the impact they have is drastic. Like there is a world of difference between a good and a bad Renekton game. It has nothing to do with its power in lane, but you really have every tool. Like this champion's got like it's a 2014 champ, or I think 2013. What a phenomenal design of a champ. He has everything that a top laner needs. And you see this, some Renekton feels unkillable, and you're an ADC and you're permanently scared because max range, he just dashes and flash and stuns you, and then you're 1 HP and just survives and goes like, I feel like having an ability to win lane from top lane, but then you're not going to be able to win through side lane because he's not really a side laner. But then you have to understand how the game is played to be able to find the flank once again and understand space, especially understand vision, finding a flank ward, or preparing your own lane with your early, like your newly gotten power to be able to shift your power towards someone else because you cannot be the main carry of your team is wonderful. A lot of top laners, they just have the I press my button, the tanks, the Ornn, the Sion. You can just press your button, be a mid bag. Some of them are like pure carries. Camille, you can just press R and then you're still going to win side lane. Renekton doesn't do any of this. He has to get a lead, and then he has to transfer the lead to he has a very good secondary carry. And you clearly see that when Bean plays Renekton, and then, I don't know, like, not that Carlsen plays Renekton, it's like, even if they get the same amount of resources, you feel like it's a different champion. And I really like when a champion is like, you can clearly see like there is like different categories of players of the same champion. And I haven't seen a lot of really good Renekton this year, but some of them made it work, and I really respect these players. And I think because it's such a fundamental champion, it fits well.
No, by the way, I know what you mean, especially for top lane, now that it's considered like a top lane champion. I do think it is like prototypical of what, but it is sweet. If you want to be a carry player in top lane, you can't play Renekton in lane, you don't get to be the carry player. Like, because as you say, it's all about being responsible. And you know there's only a certain point in the game also where you're OP. I actually think back in the day, it's why Lee Sin was very well balanced for a long time. You know, the old thing with Lee Sin was, yeah, it's godlike for the first 20 minutes, but after that, it just falls off like a motherfucker. So if you didn't do anything in that first 20 minutes, you don't get the advantage. Like, it's actually quite fair, because that way, if I'm playing against you, I also know what the win conditions are, right? Okay, now's when you're strong. I'm going to withstand that. But if I get to the right point in the game, you fall apart. So, no, and also the other thing about Renekton is, it looks OP when the guy's mega fed, but if he fucks up in that team fight and goes in wrong with the fucking E or whatever, then he's completely exposed. He gets killed immediately. Like, there's a lot of skill to that. It's actually why this year, when Thorin did play Renekton, it's actually when he earned my respect, bro. He had some games where I was like, actually, he's better than I thought he was. Like, people were telling me, like, this guy would only be a weak side tank. Like, no, he had some pretty OP Renekton games this year. All right, let's do another question. Won't do too many just from that. We'll keep it varied. Okay. I've got an interesting one, because I'd be interested to hear what you'd say about this. Right, Big Boy says, how has the League of Legends subreddit changed over the years? So this will be from your perspective. Did you used to use the League subreddit back in the day?
I never used Reddit for anything in my life, except when I have an issue with my computer or something, and I'm just typing Reddit at the end of my Google search. I've always thought that Reddit was the worst place to speak about League of Legends in the world, and my opinion has never changed so far. Because I think that, like a lot of parts of Reddit, because opinions are evaluated based on how pleasing they are, and moderation is kind of a ring of power, always end up being a small ring of power. There is a lot of, this is like one of the most nepotist place on the internet, where I don't like to partake in bandwagoning on ideas. And I think that a system that kills unpopular opinions is a bad system. Because that's where the whole exciting part of exchanging with people is to come with different takes and exchanging with them. But then you get downvoted anyway.
No, I can tell you that is the ultimate flaw, is even built into the voting system. If you know back in the day, like before Reddit, what people actually used to use, especially in StarCraft, was Team Liquid. They used forums, right? And on a flat forum, Well, aside from people saying, I agree with you, there is no way you get like validation from being right. So at the time, the only purpose of posting the opinion is because that's your opinion or you think that is right. I agree. When you make it so that, like, first of all, you essentially get punished for having an unpopular opinion, you are automatically going to make an echo chamber where you just, eventually people will just learn, or I get disincentivized every time I have a different opinion. Right, I just won't have that opinion, or I'll change my opinion to be more like what people want it to be. So you're already going to destroy like the truth or the interest or the merit of any argument, because essentially it's going to become like politics. Like in politics, if you ask most politicians behind the scenes, they know there's certain things that are really wrong with society that they want fixed, but they know that if that's not popular, I'm not going to be the one who says that's my platform, because then I'm done as a politician. Like, I have to try and get these people's votes, then do something vaguely like what they say that goes sort of a bit like what I want. Like, it's a nightmare. I'm sure no one would want that, but that's what we've done to our conversations, is dog shit. And then the other thing is, the reason he's asking there is because I said a few days ago that basically I wish people who were modern content creators knew what Reddit was like when people first discovered it for esports games. Because at the beginning, by the way, it had none of this shit of like politics. I'll give you an example. Everyone right now loves that guy, Don Jake, right? Doing all these interviews. Oh. Every interview he does, by the way, automatically is going to blow up on Reddit. People are going to be like, great job, because he's like the new hot shit, isn't he? He's like the flavor of the month. Bro, even his Perks interview was downvoted to 0 points. Even though that's like 70 comments, because everyone's logic is, yeah, but Perks like the tweet about Ukraine and Russia war, so he's evil, so this is bad, and then ruined his whole thread. They like the Don Jake guy, they just ruined his thread and his content because the person he interviewed liked the tweet that had nothing to do with the interview or his career. And by the way, that player is one of the most legendary players ever, but we're supposed to now, because we're in the Reddit world, he's a worthless piece of shit that we can't comment on, even though we're only talking about the video game. It's not r/politics, it's r/League of Legends. You'd think the only thing that'd be relevant would be League. So anyway, that's an area that is changed, I can tell you. If you went back in time to like 2013, it was all just like super chill, bro. Like, actually, if anything, the people on Reddit were super casuals. They weren't these like mega nerds like this, remembering some shit someone said on Twitter 7 years ago. They were all just plebs who were like, hey, I'm a fan of Dyrus. Oh, cool. An interview with Snoopy. Yeah, I'll click that. Oh, wow, he talks about how he joined the team. They're like, you know, the most basic shit ever. So actually back then, the reason why everyone came to Reddit was you could get all these upvotes and loads of attention. But actually, it was like the lowest threshold ever of people being really like pricks to you and like testing your purity and spiraling out and crashing out on you constantly, like all these kids. So sadly now, it has become like a really, really fucked up, like niche little club now, where now you basically just have to like give the opinion they want or be the person they think you should be. Otherwise, you're not even allowed to exist, apparently. So sadly, now it's actually ruined. It is just a completely ruined platform. So it's all good.
I mean, and I think moderation should just remove bots. That's it.
Oh, of course.
You should just remove spam and bots, and you should let people make the decision. Yeah. I don't understand why I cannot make self-promotion. Like, the simple fact, when at some point I wanted to post some of the interviews on Reddit, and I went to Romain, it's like, oh, we need to ask the mods. And I'm like, what? Like, why do I have to ask the mods? It speaks about League of Legends. It's like, oh, but there are very precise guidelines. Like, you know what? Forget it. I don't. It's not posted.
And by the way, I can even tell you that's all nonsense too, because here's the thing. Their logic is, well, otherwise every content creator would spam the sub. First of all, they wouldn't, bro. If everyone just didn't get up for it, you'd stop. And then also, 99% of the time, that's such a rude perspective. Like, there would be no sub without content. If nobody made any content tomorrow, no one's going on the sub just to read like threads like, hey, what do you think about the new mid lane champion? People want content. So the silliest thing is they act like you're the parasite for creating content. Yeah. Their platform doesn't exist without, they're the parasite. Their platform can't exist without people like me and you, because the mods don't do it, bro. We create the content that makes their churn still go and everyone click each day.
No, I just use, if I want to interact, I use my YouTube channel. I just speak with, that's why I read certain comments on YouTube, is because I prefer that. There are morons everywhere and good people everywhere. And I decide to, people who comment on my videos, they want to interact with me about the things I say in the video. And as far as I'm concerned, it's way more accessible to speak on YouTube than to speak on Reddit. So I don't see a point of going there and discussing with people. Like, it's just nonsense.
The last question is Tallahassee Riot Supervisor asks, do you consider Die Hard or Goodfellas Christmas movies? Because they obviously have Christmas elements in them. Are they Christmas movies? What do you think, Zaboutine?
I think Die Hard is a Christmas movie. But I feel like it comes from a time where I think channels discovered that it just does well in that time of the year, because it's like a semi-family friendly, like it's action packed, but I think it's like part of this glory era of the 90s movie where you could make violence without being like it was. It's sometimes hard to find my words in English, but it's like there is a certain level of violence, but it doesn't affect you even if you're like a teenager to the point where you disgust, right? There is not that much blood, or like the act of violence are usually very cinematic.
Yeah.
It's like a Jackie Chan movie, right? It's like it's a very
you put it this way,
family-friendly action movie.
When the henchman gets beat up, you don't think, but think about his family and wow, what are the implications of killing him? I know what you mean. It's just like a cartoon in it. Who gives a fuck? Next guy.
Exactly. And it's like, and I really enjoyed them because I feel like it's not that they are that much of a Christmas movie, but because they are family-friendly action movie, they are the very few movie that's like, I know that I'm an adult. I do understand that I would sit down next to a teenager and watch a Die Hard movie and enjoy it thoroughly, whereas we have to find the reindeers of Santa made by Disney is going to be a little boring for me. So I feel like for a lot of people from my generation, it was kind of a uniting the family around the TV around that time of the year where mom and dad are not that busy because work is a little bit more slow. So channels knew they could broadcast this type of movies, and this is one of the best ones. And I do understand why these movies are Christmas movies for a whole generation, but quote unquote, they're absolutely not Christmas movies.
No.
But we haven't really replaced them because first, people don't gather around the TV anymore and they have access to streaming services. And I think that the concept of family-friendly movies has really been lost currently. Like, I think two types of movie that really got dropped by Hollywood in the last 15 years are comedies and family-friendly. Like, I'm okay with The Rock in some movies, but they've become very formulaic. Like, it's kind of the AAA games of Hollywood. And Marvel movies have tried to play that role, but to some extent. So I think they have to make their return for Die Hard to find a successor. But they are not, and they are family Christmas movies for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, the real problem, you actually nailed an angle I never heard anyone describe. Basically, the problem why people argue about that one is because obviously Die Hard, the whole premise isn't that it isn't all just about Christmas. Like, it's not like Santa saves him at the end, but it does contain, not only is it like a Christmas party that turns into Die Hard, and then he does do the like, ho, 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 whatever, I've got a machine gun now and all that. It does have things, but also, as you said, the real reason it's a Christmas movie is because back in the day when we all had like 4 TV channels, it was played every single Christmas. That was a famous thing. That's why it became traditional that you watch it every single Christmas. So to me, in that sense, it is a Christmas movie to me. I know what you mean. I used to watch it every year. The joke is in the modern day, to me, Lord of the Rings is Christmas. Because every time Christmas comes and I'm at home for the week, right, now we're going to watch the full Lord of the Ring extended edition. It's all cozy. Again, same thing. You're not really that scared when something horrible happens. It's more the thrill, isn't it? You're not sitting like, oh my God, what does it mean though that the orc killed that guy? Like, it doesn't hit you as hard. I know what you mean. There's a level that it never penetrates beyond being fantasy. And so, no, I think it is. I think that's that sense. But if you want the traditional sense of Christmas by the theme, obviously it isn't, is it? It's a fucking like heist / revenge / fucking shoot 'em up action movie, isn't it? But
Such a great trilogy, though. Such a great trilogy.
Also underrated trilogy too. Yeah, the others are like not as good, but they're pretty good too. Number 3's bagging, I think. Yeah. Okay, that will be the end of this episode. We've got to get it out for the producer here. Thank you to Zaboutine for coming on. Maybe we'll do another one in the future. I actually don't know yet myself who the course is going to be each week. We'll figure it out. Like I say, maybe Monty will come back and do another episode. But anyway, you will find out, just like me, who is going to be on the next episode of Summoning Insight.